Hello, puppies and kittens. Welcome to the Sunday Show with Aron Ra and Paul Enns, or Paulogia. It's funny, you and me, Paul, we got such short last names. I wonder if we stuck them together. Raw Ends. Or would that be? Yeah, so later on today, there will be a Sunday Show After Dark with Jimmy Snow and Erika of Skeptics and Scoundrels. Then, of course, Monday at 6, and all of the subsequent times are going to be at 6, is Skeptalk with, again, myself and Natalia Reagan, who used to do a TV show with Neil deGrasse Tyson. And from what I've seen of her, she's pretty funny. And then Chewed Gum on Tuesday with Eve Was Framed and Alyssa Ljub. And then the Hang Up with Matt Dillahunty and Eve Was Framed. And then on Thursday, we have Transatlantic Call-In Show with Luxander and Ben. And let me see if I'm missing something for Friday. Let's see. Nope. Okay, good. We have got the full list. All right. So, Paul, how are you doing?
I am doing okay. I'm bracing for hurricane season, but excited that the school season has started so that life can be normal again. I don't know. That doesn't affect you as much, I'm guessing, anymore.
Yeah, not so much. Not so much. All right. So, yeah, my kids have had kids, and now that's all like a whole generational thing. It's funny. My daughter has just recently announced that she's pregnant again. And that, yeah. So she said that at 36, that this is considered a geriatric pregnancy. And I'm like, no, little girl, you can't get old, because that would mean I'm old.
And that's clearly not true. So,
yeah, have some respect. Still remain a child for a while, so that I don't have to get older and crankier. Anyway, so do we have any calls in the queue? Let me open that up. All right. So anything else to talk about in your world for the next minute or so, sir?
Well, I'm largely been talking to a lot of scholars this month because I'm attending a bit of a scholarly conference this month on association with Bart Ehrman, but I'm looking actually forward to doing young Earth creation stuff shortly after that, because I love to switch it up. So I'm excited to be with you. So we haven't. I don't know if we've actually done a call-in show together.
Yeah, but probably not. I am so fed the fuck up with the young Earth creationists. I mean, when it is to the point that you know that they know that you know that they know that they're lying, why the fuck are we even having a conversation anymore? I think I should be focusing on more science stuff, even though the science shows, the phylogeny shows, they don't get the views. There's a cult following, to be sure. I mean, my patrons love them, and by the way, I need all the patrons I can get, and they're very happy with them, but they don't get like the standard revenue. I notice a lot of shows, a lot of science doesn't compete with sensationalism, with drama.
Sadly true.
Yeah, and that is the big problem that I have. So we have a theist under the name of Mr. ID. Let me go ahead and bring him on. Mr. ID, what is your question, sir?
Hello.
Hello.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. Hello, Aron. This is Edgar, Mr. ID, and we have been talking in the Secretary show many times.
Okay.
And the reason why I called you, because first I would like to remind you that I had answered your phylogeny challenge, because 13 years ago.
Did you?
Yeah, this me.
Why did you not make that known to anyone?
That what?
That you answered my phylogeny challenge.
No, I've been contacting you in the Atheist Experience show. I've been I've been
So why don't
telling
you
them,
answer?
but
So you must be the one that tells me that you've answered it. And when I say, okay, what's the answer then? I don't get any response.
no, I responded you. The answer is
Okay,
the
well, what's the
conclusion is
answer
that
then?
yeah, the conclusion is that you are wrong in science and you
I
are wrong
remember
about
that.
in
I remember
biology.
that.
Yeah,
That's
I remember
the
that.
response that I gave you. The response I gave you when you
Yeah,
said that was that you don't even know what the phylogeny challenge is. So how could you know what the solution to it is? You just say that I'm wrong. You
no,
don't even know what I'm wrong about. What is the phylogeny challenge?
your biology challenge. If you have given a biology challenge 30 years ago, you base your biology challenge on assumption that the theory of evolution is correct.
That the what?
And yeah, you base your biology challenge on an assumption, on a conclusion that the theory of evolution is correct. And by
Okay, so
using
Mr.
the
ID,
you
theory
before
of
okay,
evolution,
let me
before
help
you
you out with
continue,
this.
Mr.
yeah,
ID,
please,
Yeah.
Mr.
let
ID,
me
your
continue.
voice is coming in. Just I want to let you know your voice is coming in very, very, very staticky, and I
Yep.
think there's probably, if we want to have this discussion, we're going to need your sound improved a little bit. I don't know if you're on Wi-Fi, or I don't know if you're can go to if you're on speakerphone or take it off. Just you're very hard to hear right now, unfortunately, and I think that we're going to miss some of the nuance. So if you can do anything to improve that, that would be great.
Yeah.
Uh, do you want me to speak slowly?
Well,
I
the
would like you
problem
to
is
speak
that
with less static.
whenever you speak, static associates. It's like you're leaning in too close on the mic, or you've got too much gain.
Or maybe yeah, maybe I'm. How about that?
That's a little
That's much
better.
better.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay,
All right.
sorry.
Let me help
Maybe
you out
I'm
with
thinking
let me
about
help
it.
you out with the phylogeny challenge, since you've no idea what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, please.
No, yeah,
Okay.
because creationists accept that some degree of phylogeny is legit. I mean, all of them. Ken Ham of Answers in Genesis, Kent Hovind admits some degree of phylogeny. The question is that it's totally legitimate, right? That dogs are related. All the breeds of dogs are all related to each other. That the dogs are related to wolves and coyotes, and that wolves and coyotes and domestic dogs are related to other species of dogs, right? But they don't know where the line is. So
Yeah,
the
yeah.
phylogeny challenge is
That
to
is
show me where the line is. So I ask a handful of simple questions. It's so easy to do this. Just where the answer is no. I'm going to ask you a series of questions, and you tell me where the answer is no. Okay? Are
okay.
mallards related to puckards, wood ducks, and muscovies?
Well, they're related. All animals are related. If you are going to
All
base
animals are related.
on their DNA, yeah,
Okay,
because you
so
must
you
have a
accept
basis.
evolution
You must can you,
wholeheartedly.
can you please? You must have a basis in your classification. You must
Okay, so
invent a
you
basis.
accept universal common ancestry.
Yeah, but you must
Okay, so
invent
what's your
something.
problem with
You must
evolution then?
invent a basis. I don't believe in evolution
Okay, what?
because there is no evolution.
There
There is
is
no
no
such thing as
evolution.
evolution in biology.
By what process are all animals related?
They are related based on biological interrelation.
Do you know what is an interrelation?
You see, you must. That's why I told you to read my science book in the defense, in the rebuttal of your biology challenge,
You're
because
telling me that
you
you've
have no
answered a
clue on
challenge
your
you've
argument.
never read. You don't know what the phylogeny challenge is. How can you have answered it?
No, I know the biology challenge. That's the reason why I wrote a
You
science
don't
book
know
for
what it
you
is
as a
still.
rebuttal. No,
Mr. ID,
I know
please.
it.
Mr. ID, I don't know what the phylogeny challenge is. I'm going to pretend I don't. Please describe to me and the audience who doesn't know what it is, have never heard of it. In your own words, please describe back to us what
Okay,
Aron's phylogeny challenge is so that we will know.
Yeah.
okay. I will. Okay, please give me a time. Okay, on 13 years ago, Aron Ra had uploaded a video on his YouTube channel about the Paulogia challenge. And he had, in my book, he has 13 questions for those people who are against the evolution theory and are challenging them to answer his challenge. For example, his question is, okay, in the challenge number 1 that I written in my science book, God definitely created different kinds. This is the first question. The second question that he posted, he had said in
wait. The first question is God created different kinds? That's the first question?
Yes.
In my challenge?
That's the first. That's why you must remember your challenge, because I wrote that in my science book in detail.
No, but unfortunately, Mr. ID, we haven't read your book, and we cannot read your book while this call is happening, or it would be a very boring show. So you are going to need to articulate things that me and the audience don't know. Are you saying that the first question of Aron's challenge is God created kinds? That's not even a question.
No, that is the reason why he put that in his video, because he was insulting creationism.
That's not what we're trying. That's not what we're here for, Mr. ID. Mr. ID, Aron is going to talk to you, but I don't understand what we're talking about. So you need to understand, for the proxy of the audience, and for us to evaluate whether you even understand what the challenge is, you need to express the challenge in your own words now, without giving us any of the without giving us the ramifications or the consequences or your responses to it. We just need you to articulate what the challenge is, please.
Yeah, and I'm going to help you out here. You said that my challenge had... excuse me. You said that my challenge had 13 questions. That's wrong. And then you said what the first question was. That's wrong. So you got to correct yourself from the beginning. What is the phylogeny challenge, and how does one answer it?
Before that, Aron, you had a video in YouTube, and you didn't erase that. That's there.
Right. Yeah, that's right. It's there. So you have no excuse for not. I'm looking at the script for that video right now, where I explained what the phylogeny challenge is. I have a direct quote from the video explaining what the phylogeny challenge is. So, Dr. Dumbass, can you tell me what it is?
Your phylogeny challenge is you're asking those people who are against evolution theory to make another classification for the living organisms.
No,
because you are thinking that evolution theory is correct, and therefore all other explanations are wrong.
I can show that it's correct, and the phylogeny challenge is one way to prove that it is correct. I can prove to you that it is correct using that challenge.
There is such kind of thing in phylogeny in reality. You are inventing something that is not part of reality.
So God magically created Dalmatians and Dachshunds and Malamutes and Borzoi all separately?
So that question, you put that in the challenge number 2. Creation has mysterious limits that cannot be defined. And number 3, no lineage cannot be alleged traced by origin archetype. You detail challenge in your video. That's why I also detailed my answer in my book.
I've never asked these questions. Where are you getting them?
That's right. If you maybe you forgot that, but you have a video.
And what are the 13 questions? What are the 13 questions?
Oh yeah. Okay. First, the first challenge. God definitely created different kinds. Second,
no, that's not a question.
That's not a question
I ever would have said.
But you are asking us to classify.
No, we're not asking for the answers.
Completely different questions that you don't understand.
In our
what's the second
today,
question? And where did you get it from?
In your video.
I got hundreds of videos. You're apparently not talking about the phylogeny challenge because I have never said those things.
Your video about phylogeny challenge. I'm talking about the specific video on the phylogeny challenge only, because we are talking about
looking at the script
theory.
for that video right now, and the questions you're talking about, which aren't
Okay.
questions at all, are not in it.
That is why you must detail your video. You must slowly read it, hear it carefully, and write it so that you could get those challenges that you had posted in your video.
I have
It is
done
not my
exactly
video.
that,
It is
and
not my video.
that is how I am able to look at the transcript of that video right now. I'm looking at it right now. It doesn't say what you're saying. It does explain what the challenge is, but it doesn't remotely match the description that you pulled out of somewhere else. That is, you're not reading from a video I ever made. I never said those things.
No, it is in your video. That's why you did not read my book, because I did that in my book. That's your problem, because I told you 5 years
Give me
ago
a
that I
timestamp.
answered
When did
your.
I say this in that video? In the phylogeny challenge video, when did I say the thing that God created? And how is that a question? That's a statement. So what are these 13 questions?
No, that's the challenge. You are asking us to make a new classification for biology, because you are thinking and you are accepting that the
No.
evolution theory
No.
is correct.
No,
Because
no,
biology challenge is a classification.
you understand. Kent Hovind understands. Ken Ham understands that evolution is correct. They all accept that all dogs are related to each other. They were not magically created separately. They all talk when a biological relationship means that they have the dachshunds and the hound dogs, the bloodhound and the basset hound. They're all biologically related, and not from a common ancestor from the beginning of all hounds. And the same kind of thing with terriers. And then the common ancestor of hounds and terriers was itself also a domestic breed of dog. And then prior to that, there were a variant of Asiatic wolves, but they're still biologically related. The common ancestor for all domestic dogs is an Asiatic wolf. The way that they have diversified is by evolutionary means, by random mutations, and these are being selected for. Now, you can do that with domestic dogs, but nature can do it too, a couple of different ways. We call that natural selection. So creationists, young earth creationists, accept fully and without any reservation that there is biological relationships on evolutionary mechanisms. The only question is, how far back does it go? So what I have described.
Can I rebut that? Can I rebut that?
No, you can't.
No, I can.
you
Remember
can't.
that if I did, I can, Aaron.
No,
That's the
you
reason
can't.
why I am challenging you to a debate, to write a book to rebut my challenge to you. In your
How am I going to write a
started
book
the challenge.
to rebut your challenge
I
of
can defeat
you don't
in
know
the
what my
debate in
challenge
science,
is?
Aaron. I can rebut you, Aaron. Just give me a time.
Oh, I
Okay,
asked you what the challenge is. You failed to tell me what the challenge is.
No, I've already told you that you have 13 topics that you have
No, I
discussed
don't.
in your
No, I don't.
group.
No, I don't. But to amuse
There
us,
is
tell me
the
what the
reason
13
why
questions are.
that's why don't interrupt me. I will give you those certain topics that you had posted in your YouTube video. Don't interrupt me. Okay, the first thing that I noticed in your challenge that you are asking us that God definitely created different kinds. That is the first topic that you have posted. Second,
Nope.
creation has mysterious limits that cannot be defined. Please let me speak.
It's what?
Third, no lineage could not be allegedly traced by our original archetype. 4, unable to identify by what those kinds are. 5, how many there are or how many kinds there are. 6,
right.
How could they be
That's
recognized?
talking about kinds.
7, the mystic division in the following taxa. 8,
Yes.
if evolution of common ancestry is not true, and you added more. 9, magically created and unique to apparently ancestor to it. 10, how could we tell the dividing line between kinds and not kinds?
Okay,
And
so
11,
what you're missing.
uniquely created kinds
Hold
cannot
on.
be grouped
Wait.
together.
Wait.
12,
You said, well, you got the sentence. I would challenge them to show me their mystic divisions among the following taxa. Right? You got that part? That sentence is in there. That, however, is not a question. It's beginning the first list of questions. What is the first of the list of questions that follows that line?
The first topic that you had posted in your challenge is God definitely created different kinds.
No,
because
no,
I understand your thinking.
No. Go back to the thing. I would challenge them to show me the mystic divisions among the following taxa. Let me just read the rest of it, because if people you're missing the important part. Creationists usually accept that taxonomy is superficially accurate, but they'll only concede that to a degree, because they insist that their God miraculously conjured a series of definitely different kinds of animals, which were each specially created separate from each other. Creationists allow that each of these kinds have since diversified by evolutionary means, but only within mysterious limits, which they refuse to rigidly define. And they say that no lineage can be traced beyond their alleged original archetypes. However, they're unable to identify what those kinds are, how many there are, or how they could be recognized. I would challenge them to show me their mystic divisions among the following taxa. And the first question there is... You don't know, do you? Okay.
No, I thought I told you I wrote the answer in my science book, and I've been following you in atheist experience.
Okay,
I've been talking to Kyle. I've been talking to the people.
The first question to follow the
You
following.
You see, Aaron, I have written a detailed response to your Paulogia challenge. Please,
without knowing the first fucking thing about what you're talking about. So let's go with what we're talking about. What is the following taxa that we're talking about? It's the question I just asked you, which you ducked and dodged. Are mallards related to pocards, wood ducks, and muscovies? That's the first of like 20 questions.
If you
is that a yes or a no?
If you are going to invent a basis of your classification, they're all related.
So,
for example,
is that a yes
I'm going to use a DNA,
or is that a no?
Yes, they're related. They are biologically related. And they call it biological interrelation.
How are they related?
Because they have the same DNA. They have the same biological
cell. The same DNA?
Can you please repeat the question?
Have the same DNA. If they had the same DNA, they'd all be the same species, the same breed. They all have differences.
Yeah, and the same designer. Aron Ra.
You start with a basic duck DNA, and then you make, and then one division has their own mutations to become slightly unique, so that they become mallards, and some other become pocards, and then some other group becomes wood ducks, and then of course you get the muscovies, and these are all different DNA. It starts out as the same thing, but each one is tweaked a little bit by these mutations. And it doesn't have to be natural selection. Not at this point. This point, we're just talking about genetic drift, really. But it is still an evolutionary mechanism. If they are related, then what you're saying is that mallards, pocards, wood ducks, and muscovies have all descended from a common ancestor. Do you understand and accept that?
I understand it, but they are called biological interrelation, and it is not biological evolution. It is totally.
But that's exactly what biological evolution is. Define what evolution is.
Evolution is simply a change.
No, it is not simply a change. It's a very specific.
No, I'm just making it short for you because you don't know about science.
Oh yeah, I don't know about science. Well, I know about phylogeny, and you definitely don't. So evolution evolution is a change in allelic frequencies or descent with inherent modification, genetic modification, for subsets of a common ancestor. Right? This is how biodiversity occurs. This is I want you to understand this. Evolution is the only explanation of biodiversity. So You
No, it
either
is
say
called biology. Aron Ra, it is
hello.
called physical interrelation.
You either say that mallards and pockards and wood ducks and muscovies were all separate magical creations. God made each one unrelated, or they evolved from a common ancestor. And yes, the process is these biological interrelations is called evolution.
No, it is not evolution because there is no such thing of evolution in nature.
Yeah, there is. What is the
asked me
mechanism? What is the mechanism by which these 4 varieties of ducks came about?
intelligent selection.
Intelligent selection for mallards.
Yes. No, for everything.
Okay, so
living organism.
what is the intelligence selecting for, and what is the intelligence?
They are selecting for life, but living organism must live.
Oh, okay. So, this one's a dead one, so I won't select that.
He's not wrong there.
What's
dead ones don't reproduce as often, so that's I guess maybe.
Yeah, they're not nearly as efficient. No. So evolution,
so
unless otherwise specified. When scientists are talking about evolution, they just say the word evolution. They're not talking about just any old change. They're talking about a very specific one. The scientific context always refers to an explanation of biodiversity via population mechanics, summarily defined as descent with inherent modification, specifically genetic modification. Now, this is a process of varying allele frequencies in reproductive populations, leading to usually subtle changes in the morphological or physiological composition of descendant subsets. Now, when you compile all of these over several generations, they can expand biodiversity when continuing variation between genetically isolated groups eventually lead to one or more descendant branches, increasingly distinct from their ancestors or cousins. So that's how you get. That's how you get a common ancestor. That is how you get a common ancestor. That's how you get a common ancestor duck to become these 4 different varieties of ducks.
It's wrong, Aron. Please let me speak.
Okay, how did you get these 4 different varieties of ducks then?
It is called, you are asking for a creation. In my challenge, in my book that I have written,
now you're contradicting yourself.
Intelligent created. They're intelligently made.
They're intelligently made.
They are intelligently made. They're intelligently created because there's no
somebody broke out a tool set. How were they made? So what you're telling me is that you're contradicting yourself now. You're saying that the Muscovies,
no, I don't contradict myself,
are not related to mallards. You said at first that they were related to mallards. Now you're saying that they're not.
No, I said they are related because if you are going to use the basis of DNA or cell, they are related. You know, we had to
in what sense are they related?
Our explanation.
In what sense are they related?
They are related.
In what sense are they related?
In what sense they are related? They are related because they are going to live here on Earth.
But in what sense are they related?
In one place. They were related.
Do you understand? You understand that let's see, what would be a good example? You have a Kia Niro that runs on gasoline, and you have a Kia Niro that runs on a battery, an EV, right? You understand that those cars may belong under the same brand name, and in that sense, maybe you could say that they're related, but in a literal sense, they're not related, because they didn't come about naturally. They didn't derive from a common ancestor. They didn't evolve. Those are creations. Not
that is your invention. That is how
Mr.
you
ID,
explanation. You know, I understand
Mr. ID, when we say related, on our side of the call here, we mean in the same way that 2 cousins are related because they share a grandparent. That's what we mean when we say related, that they had a common ancestor. When you were saying that the mallards are related, do you mean that they have a common ancestor, or do you just mean that they have a familiar sense about them? Which of those do you mean?
A common designer.
So you reject that they have a common ancestor?
Yeah, they either have a common ancestor, meaning that they evolved. They either have a biological relationship, meaning that they've evolved from a common ancestor, or they are magical creations having been
let's not
derived
even say
separately from a god, a genie, basically.
let's not even call it evolved. Let's just say descended. They descended from, right? Like,
Yeah.
well, let's take that the bad word out.
Descent. If they're special creations, then they're not descended from. God just went abracadabra poof, abracadabra poof. Now I have wood ducks and muscovies.
That's what I told you. That's why Aaron, I told you in my book about Paulogia the Challenge that you must understand the topic of intelligence, because intelligence will going to explain us about many things in biology.
Well, we're at this point we're just trying to decide what you even believe, and we're having a hard time getting there. So,
by the way, somebody pointed out that your book on Amazon, Mr. ID, somebody pointed out that your book is on Amazon listed with 1 out of 5 stars. And the description here is the book seems to go. The book seems to go nowhere fast. This book is more of an attack on Aron. Hold on, this book is more of an attack on Aron Ra than it is a critical analysis of the available data.
You must read it, Aaron.
Why must I read it? If I'm talking with you, because I'm talking with you directly. Aaron, I can ask you the questions challenge directly, but problem is you don't understand intelligence enough to answer the first fucking question.
I repeat, you made a scientific challenge to all of us. Now I'm answering you a scientific answer. Now it is your turn to answer that in a book or in a video.
Okay,
you must answer that, or you must say sorry, or I'm surrender.
You don't have a scientific answer. You have a magical answer, and it doesn't relate. You said that they had all these ducks had a biological relationship.
Don't judge the book on its cover, Aaron. We are talking science. Please don't say that. If you love science, you have to read both sides. I am your best critic, and I'm your best fan. You must read my science book, or say, I'm sorry, I don't understand science.
Well, I can already tell you don't understand science. You haven't understood a fucking thing we've said so far. So,
I told you that if I don't understand your challenge, I'm not going to write a book.
Do you understand and accept? Let me try a different thing. This is not one of the questions of the challenge, but it'll help illustrate. Do you accept that dachshunds? Do you accept that dachshunds, basset hounds, bloodhounds are all biologically related, meaning they all descended from a common ancestor through evolutionary means?
No.
Okay. What is the way?
They are related. They are related because we are doing the. Please, let me answer you, please. The reason why they are related, because we are using a basis in classification and biology. Anybody can invent a basis. I can invent, Paul can invent, anybody can invent. But that is not how you make science. Science must be part of reality.
Yeah, and you're not.
You see?
The things you're saying are not part of reality. We know for certain.
Which part?
We know for certain that each of these breeds of dogs were derived by, well, you could say by intelligent designers, although they're just it's artificial selection, but it's still the same thing as natural selection, in the sense that they're identifying specific mutations where the original wolf genome begins to change in some variant of descendant dogs, and so these dogs the breeders sort out certain characteristics which are indicated by the mutations, and they read them such that they can produce these or enhance these traits. These are evolutionary mechanisms: selection, random mutation, populations over generations. That's evolution.
I understand that.
So do you now understand and accept?
I understand that.
So do you now understand? Do you now understand and accept that basset hounds, bloodhounds,
accept that because they are not part of reality.
Are biologically related by evolutionary means? Do you now understand and accept that? Yes or no?
you said that you said artificial selection and natural selection are the same. Is that
No,
really
I
true?
said in the sense that they're selecting for specific
But
mutations.
is it the same? Is it the same or no?
But they're not entirely the same. No.
You said a while ago artificial selection and natural selection is the same. It's the same or
In
not?
the
A or
sense
B?
that they're both selecting for random mutations. The difference is that
But
people.
are the same? Are artificial selection? You please yes or no?
Hello. The difference is that when when people are selecting for mutations in their livestock, they're looking for what is going to benefit the people, not for what's going to benefit the animal. Natural selection favors the animal. It looks for what's going to benefit the animal. So that's where they're different.
I understand.
But otherwise, it's the same.
No, you have a very misconception in science. This is the reason I'm clarifying to you. Do you really accept that artificial selection and natural selection is the same? Are the same?
How many times have I just corrected you on this? I said
because that is the fundamental mistake.
Okay, why don't I just let you ramble and rave? Because we can't have a two-way conversation.
Okay, yes, let me
explain to you. After I've answered them, I explained to you the similarities and the differences between artificial and natural selection. And then you ignored all of that, like you ignore all of everything, and then went right back and said, then they're the same. But they're not, because there's differences in there too. They are the same in this sense,
they are not the same.
and different in this other sense.
They are not the same. That's the reason why you must know the difference between a change based on a natural selection and change based on artificial selection or intelligent selection. You must know that differences before you say phylogeny tree. That's the main topic in science.
And sadly, you don't. Okay, so Mr. ID,
you did not.
Mr. ID, I would love to have this conversation, but frankly, you're too stupid to allow this to continue. So either you buy some IQ points really quickly and learn how to communicate properly, or I'm dropping you.
I have a book, Aron Ra, please. I have a book, and you can dismiss my book, but I have a book against you. You can read it, no problem. But there's a book. Your apology.
Yeah, there's a book full of bullshit written by a guy who doesn't know what he's talking about.
Answer it or say sorry.
Goodbye,
you must answer
Mr.
that
Idiot.
Or say I'm wrong.
Goodbye, Mr. I tried to explain why you're wrong, but you're too stupid.
You must answer that
Goodbye,
or
Mr.
say
Idiot.
I'm wrong.
Okay. Now let's see who else we got here to talk to. Do we have another theist here? Yes, we do have another theist. We're going to prioritize those. And we are talking with Peter in Texas. Can you hear me?
Hey, Aron, can you hear me?
Yes.
Hey, Aron. I've actually seen you in person before last year when you were going up against David Wood. I was the Zoroastrian guy who had a bunch of Zoroastrian questions and stuff. I don't know if you remember that.
It's surprising that I don't, because I mean, how often do you meet a Zoroastrian in the Western world?
I mean, yeah, no, case in point, yeah. But no, I guess so. As I've mentioned to the call center guy, so my question is more towards a different approach to theism. So I feel like the Abraham people, like the people of the Abrahamic faith, give this like weird, fantastical kind of approach to deities and afterlife that I feel like has given like an inaccurate image of religion or just God in general. You know, I'm from Iran, and over the last 2 years, Islam has like dropped from like 80% to 30%. You know, and like my dad, I think, is also an atheist at this point. Like people in Iran have just given up because they have this misconception that if I pray hard enough, that good things will happen. And then, of course, with what's going on in Iran, they have, you know, people have lost faith in the religion and in God, so they've preferred atheism. But I guess going back to the point of the question is that so I'm a Zoroastrian, and we don't necessarily believe in kind of like God having like hands-on, like he's not really, like he doesn't really do much in our lives. He's kind of like the creator that just lets everything happen. And
so it's rather like a deistic concept.
Yeah, where he just he doesn't get involved. When we pray, we don't ask God for favors like, oh, my mom's in the hospital, please, if you could, give her good health and stuff like that, I'd be very grateful. Like it seems like this relationship with God is more like, what can I get out of it? Like if you give me this, and then I'll believe in you. So it's a separate approach where our what gets us into heaven or hell is just based off of what we do. It's not so much as do we have faith first? Because that's one of the reasons I left Christianity, was because it was faith-based.
Peter, I'm wondering, I'm struggling to wonder on a deistic level. I've talked to many deists, and I always struggle to wonder why I should care if there's a deist God, why I should spend a single second. But it sounds like you think there's a heaven and hell?
I do, yeah.
Okay, so how do you know that?
Well, yeah, that's the thing is you can't really prove it through science. It's more just personal outcomes in your life that kind of drove you to that.
You have outcomes in your life. You have outcomes in your life that affirm to you whether there's an afterlife.
Well, personal situations that kind of made me study more into it.
Wait, how do you account for this? I've got so many questions. I mean, how do you account for the fact that you're not really describing a Zoroastrian God. You are describing a deistic God. I know that most of the modern religions have an unreasonable reverence for their holy doctrines, but you're not apparently basing anything on the Avestas of Zarathustra, because therein, you've got Ahura Mazda says that all that you praise is to the glory of Mazda, and you're told there that the righteous man ascends to the kingdom of justice and truth under Ahura Mazda, and the wicked man descends into the kingdom of the lie under Ahriman the opposer, which is the template for that later religions came up to make their Satan out of. Mm-hmm. So you're not talking about a deistic God.
Well, could you reiterate that last part?
Yes. Okay. So the Zoroastrians differ from the Christians not only in that they're a hell of a lot, not only in that they're older than Judaism, but they came up with the concept of heaven and hell, which the Jews didn't have. I mean, they had Sheol, which was much the same thing as the Greek Hades. It's the land of the dead. Everybody dead, good or bad, all go to the same land of the dead. The Zoroastrians came up with this thing about judging people on whether they were good or bad people, and then so dividing the good people to go here into the bad people to go here. Christians adopted the Zoroastrian concept, but with a twist. It no longer had anything to do with whether you're really good or bad. And the Muslims do the same thing, because the Quran constantly repeats this. Doing good means believing, and if you were an unbeliever, that's by definition doing evil. So Christianity and Islam both judge not over whether you're actually a good or bad. It has nothing to do with the deeds in your life. It has nothing to do with whether you're a charitable, good-hearted, beneficial person. It has entirely nothing else to do than whether you believed what you were told simply because you were told to believe it.
Yeah, no, and that's kind of what I agree. I think that the Abrahamic religions have kind of got it wrong, where you're a good person if you believe in my God, and if you don't, you go to hell. And I feel like, aside from the heaven and hell, I feel like I don't want to say my religion is better than theirs. It's kind of like hypocritical, but I think that it is a more better way of being a good, I guess, a human being if you just adhere to good thoughts, good words, and good deeds over, I believe in Yahweh, which is kind of which is also something I should add is I'm pretty sure he's a pagan thunder god, Yahweh. Did a little research with Bart Ehrman and watching.
And I'll give you credit for this. The lines of good word and good deed and all of that. That's in the Hadnak Nost, or it's in one of the Avestas anyway. I remember reading that. So yeah, that's at least in the scripture somewhere.
Yeah, no, and really, my mentor has taught me just read the Gothas, because the Avesta wasn't entirely from Zarathustra. Most of it came from the Magi that came during the Achaemenid period. So he just said focus mostly on the Gothas, because those were kind of like the hymns that Zoroaster said himself. And so I just basically pretty much wanted to get your opinion on, rather than believing on this concept of, if I believe in Yahweh or Allah, that gets me straight to heaven, more so kind of like a scale where your actions aren't based off of who you believe, much rather what you do in this life. For example,
Peter,
yeah.
Are you advocating for this because you think it's better? Or are you advocating for this because you think it's true? Because I actually don't care about the utility or relative utility between different religions at all until such time as it's been demonstrated that one is more true than the other. And truth being aligning to reality as adjudicated by predictive power. Are you basically just pitching that your religion is better, or do you have some reason for us to think that it's true?
I think that is a good question. That is a really good question, because my point, because I didn't want to come into this saying that my religion is better, but I just think that it just gives a better representation of religion in general.
Don't. So you see why I may not care.
Yeah, sort of. Yeah, I just wanted to see like your opinion, because it's. I know you debate a lot of Abrahamic people, and I was just seeing, between these two kind of.
But you see, until are you here to can you demonstrate in some way that yours is more likely to be true than the Abrahamic religions?
Well, true in what sense? Like in the supernatural kind
true
of.
True that it corresponds to reality and adjudicated by predictive power.
What was that first part? Sorry, I didn't hear you.
That it corresponds to reality, and reality is adjudicated by predictive power.
Sorry, I'm not quite.
There's another thing.
Let me skip the second part. Just it corresponds to reality. That what you believe is more real than what the Abrahamic religion people believe.
Okay, yeah. So that part is the part I guess I'm like, well, like what we do or what we believe in.
I don't care.
Yeah, what's the value in believing?
I feel like believing. I mean, it kind of gives us, I guess you could say, purpose. As much as it is a religious kind of aspect, it's also a cultural thing.
Right, but that's just utility, right? That's not demonstration of reality. That's just pitching that that something has a better utility or an outcome that you like better. But that doesn't really matter.
But I feel like it just it could push, like, I guess you said, humanity forward. The same way that I guess you could say just atheism, not believing in something, because
but forward implies a direction, right? And we're not all going to agree on what direction we should go.
Right.
So you're arbitrarily picking several things here. Essentially this call is like, I like strawberry ice cream, and I'm like, cool, you like strawberry ice cream, neat.
personally, I go for peanut butter ice cream, but
Cool. Awesome. So do you have something in your belief system other than that you like it or you prefer it in some way that Aaron or I or anyone on the planet should think that you're correct, other than that it's in some way subjectively you prefer it?
Yeah. Do you have a
Well, yeah,
reason that we should believe what you believe?
more not. I will say this: I've been kind of watching you on modern day debates, and I know not to pick that battle with you because you probably beat me in a split second. But I just kind of like a thought, just to as a question, or more so for the people listening, kind of like it's the thing with just the supernatural.
Well, that's not
like,
what we. That's really, not actually what we do here. We don't actually just have thought-provoking people to have share with an audience their thought-provoking idea. What we do here on the show is that Aaron and I want to believe as many true things and as few false things as possible. And so what we do on this show is we try and have people come and tell us true things so that we can correct ourselves where we're wrong. Not to just like hypothetically chit-chat about, things that may or may not be neat.
Yeah, no, I get it. I understand. Yeah, and I just I didn't get a chance to tell you this like in person, so I just wanted to get the chance to kind of like research, and you're still kind of kicking my ass even a year of research, and I mean you're kind of still kicking my ass over it. But I feel like with just how the world kind of like moved forward and like all these like kind of, I guess you say, miracles that you don't really like think about. It's kind of like it is kind of like makes you doubt sometimes, like, could there be something above ourselves, over just like the natural world, like supernatural in a
Sure,
sense?
there could be, but what reason do we have to think that there is?
That's a good question, and it's definitely like something that I can ponder on a little bit more. And then if I have like any questions, I could call back, or if I have something that
if you have call back, because the line isn't here for just opening up the lines of chit chat, like if you get together and you're high with your buddies and you propose things that might be true. The line is here for what do you believe and why. So when you have thought about this and you have good reasons to think that someone other than yourself should believe what you do, then definitely please do call back, because if Aaron and I are wrong, or any of the hosts, then we definitely want to know.
Yep.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, thank you guys for your time. Oh, one more thing before I go, Aaron, I had a quick question. I'm asking because I think you might have an opinion. Black Sabbath or Iron Maiden?
Yeah. Sabbath.
Oh,
I'm old.
Come on, man. I'm sorry. I can't be friends, man.
Sorry, Sabbath was my band for since I was in 14.
I could see that. Personally,
Iron Maiden didn't yet exist when I loved Sabbath.
All right. Well, thank you guys for your time, and I'll let you guys go. If I have
my second favorite. My second favorite is Motorhead. My third favorite is Sabbath with Dio. So Black Sabbath is in first and third place.
And
Judas Priest.
Really I wish I was old enough to see Dio before he passed. I love his music, but I'm seeing Maiden this November, so that's good enough for me.
All right, good talking to you.
But yeah, thank you guys.
Thanks.
I'll have a good one.
Okay,
so is Striper not on your list at all, Aaron?
Yeah, and similarly, there's a number of things that will surprise people. I mean, for example, I don't like Guns N' Roses, and I don't know why. Okay, so then we have another theist, and this is Matthew in Ohio. Matthew, you're on Skeptalk.
Hey, Aaron and Paul, how are you guys doing today?
It's all right. It's Aaron.
All right,
please.
thanks.
sorry, Aron. Yes, correct.
Mhm.
So my question in the queue was, if there's no God, what do you hold yourself accountable to? And I want to make it very clear, I'm not having the atheists don't have moral argument. That's not what this is. No, it's more of the questioning of the existence of atheists and kind of leaning on the title of the show. So basically, my question is, what do you guys hold yourself accountable to? Aaron, you can go first, or Paul. It doesn't really matter, but I'm sure you probably may have two different things you guys hold yourself accountable. I want to assume that just because you guys are atheists, you have the same.
Sure. I mean, I'm kind of keen to hear Paul's answer to this, but for me, I understand that from an evolutionary perspective, there was a time when we didn't yet have, as a species, we didn't yet have supermassive brains. We were not yet geniuses. Not to say that necessarily we are now, but there was a time when we didn't have the supermassive brains, but neither did we have the short response muscle fibers that in the percentage that chimpanzees and such do, that chimpanzees and gorillas and that sort of thing. So we get into a fight with either of them, they're going to just, even though chimpanzees are smaller than us, they're still going to take us out.
100%.
The one thing that we did have, and that chimpanzees studies have shown don't really, when they have, like, it's not black and white. Yes, you have it. No, you don't. It's like in percentages. Everything is in a matter of degrees. Chimpanzees have a very low level of empathy for other people as compared to humans. Humans are allowed to sense the pain. And when I say sense the pain, you understand, looking at an animal, that animal is in pain. You don't feel the pain. It's not a psychic thing, but you can look at the animal and know that animal is in pain or distress or whatever. And if you can do that with an animal, certainly you can do it with another person. What happens with most people is they might be able to recognize the degree of pain or discomfort that other people are in, and maybe not stretch that out to animals. I'm one of the people that can also feel it in it, or detect it or understand it. Let's put it that way, because as I said, it's not a psychic thing. I can understand when another animal is in stress. Now, when what we have as a society is very different from a lot of other herd animals. We're a social species, but what usually happens, like within wildebeest, for example, I mean, when the dogs, the painted dogs, come running in, the whole herd of wildebeest run for the hills, and the dogs pick out the slowest and nab that one, and everybody else runs away going, lucky it wasn't me. To a slightly higher degree, look at Cape buffalo. They do the same thing, and then they realize that one of their fallen calves is now in the clutches of the lions. And the Cape buffalo now turn around and say, whoa, now. And what is 4 or 5 lions going to do against 150 Cape buffalo? Such is our species. We did not leave our mothers, our children, to run to save our own skins. When the weakest of us were singled out, we came back with this concept, which I know that this resonates in the heart of every compassionate person. You fuck with one of us, you fuck with all of us, right? Stand together. Nobody can beat all of us. Most animals can take out an individual person. I mean, when I say most animals, most animals in the size range, of course. But it doesn't matter what kind of a predatory animal you are, you ain't beating all of us. And we're coming with sticks, and we're coming with rocks, and we're coming with vengeance. And we will back the fuck off. Anything will back away from that. That was our strength. So in societies, we have these people that we regard, that this person stands by their word. This person shows the empathy for other people. This person helps other people. This person's capable, reliable, and therefore he gets preferential treatment. We love him. We feed him. We pay him. He gets to have the most children and all of that. Whereas aberrations, whether they have dysfunctional mirror neurons or underdeveloped frontal lobes or whatever, they tend to be removed from the gene pool. They're ostracized, they are banished, imprisoned, or killed. And so, from a natural selection standpoint, what you end up with is a preference of people who have compassion for their family, friends, and fellows, the ones who are reliable, as opposed to the selfish liars. Now, selfish liars still crop up, but as I said, there's a way to weed them out. Do you follow where I'm going with that?
I'm following it.
Yeah, and so that's where our morality came from.
So, I guess, what do you hold? So you hold yourself accountable to that. Can you? And I'm not saying I don't understand what you're saying, but can you kind of sum that up into a sentence like I hold myself accountable to?
Well, I'm going to say that I hold myself accountable, if you want to put it in that term.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I know that I feel better when I am in accord with the needs of the people around me. When I'm able to be helpful to other people, there's a reward in that for me. I would rather be able to share with other people than to be stingy and deprive others for my own gain, for example, because I have compassion for those other people. I have to do something to I can't be completely selfish. Not at these other people's expense.
So you hold yourself accountable to compassion. So even if the people thought that, hey, look, this is better for us, but your compassion told you that, no, this is actually better, you would go against the people, at least in theory, an idea to say, no, this is the better way to do a thing.
Yeah, I mean, there have been times when when a given society will turn in a bad direction because of the religion of the time or the politics of the time, that kind of thing. And then now you have to to defend your humanity, you have to rebel against whatever poisonous forces have corrupted that society and try to right that. You know what's right or wrong. So if you have to make excuses to justify what you realize, you are unnecessarily causing harm or suffering and pain to another person. You don't have to do that, but you're doing it on the excuse that they're unrighteous or they're unbelievers or that they're foreigners or whatever, for whatever reason they deserve it. If you have to make excuses like that, then you already realize you're actually the one in the wrong.
Mm. So you would say that the thing that you hold yourself accountable to didn't always exist, but it was evolutionarily birthed, for lack of a better term.
Didn't always exist. I don't know that that's true. I know that animals show a great deal of compassion. I have a house full of snakes, and most of them understand that I am no threat, and they do not want to hurt me. My heaviest snake accidentally bit me in a feed response, realized I was the wrong person, and backed every tooth out of my arm instantly. And I could tell that it was upset over that. I was once feeding a snake that didn't mean to bite me, and it so upset her that she wouldn't feed again for a month.
Oh wow!
Yeah, so they have remorse. They understand when they've caused the unnecessary harm. I have super predators all around me. I've got dogs and cats, and any of them could take me out. Except for the really little ones, they could take me out. But the thing is, they don't want to. They don't need to.
Mm-hmm.
They want to be in a social situation, because all of us in this house are social animals. Well, the snakes not so much, but they're coming along.
So when I asked about it being that it always exists, you seem to say that I assume maybe that you came from an evolutionary point, but it sounds to me that you would say that you don't know whether it already exists or it evolved. You couldn't tell.
Oh, I would have to say that it evolved.
Yeah, Matthew, it didn't exist. Ethics didn't exist before sentient creatures. Sentient creatures. I think everyone on this call agrees that sentient creatures happened a finite time ago, right?
Yeah, and we understand. We've seen where a dog will save a fish out of water and put it back in the water. We've seen how a hippo will defend a deer against attack dogs or whatever. We've seen where this happens, where as some other animal says, you know what, I can step in and I can help, and I'm going to help. That happens, and that's independent of humans or society. And so if that exists in other animals, then it must have predated us.
But we don't propose that it
saying,
predated sentient creatures, Matthew. We don't.
Right.
We don't. That's where it's finite.
Okay. So you would say that standard is finite.
Well, finite.
There was a time when there was no life on this world. So how could you have ethics with no social species interacting?
Mm-hmm.
Try to view things in terms of a dial instead of a switch. Instead of on or off, it's by degrees.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just saying. I mean, you are. And this is coming from the assumption that we are the only creatures in the universe.
No,
meaning the earthly biological creatures.
Yeah, I don't make that assumption.
I don't either.
Okay, that's fair. So, Paul, is that the same kind of thing that you hold yourself?
I mean, so this is a very weird question. This is a very strange question because you are asking us as two individuals what we hold ourselves accountable to. So you're basically asking our personal ethic, but it feels like you are asking about something much more meta. I will respond that my personal ethic is much in line with Aron's. My personal ethic ideal is that I attempt to minimize suffering and to maximize flourishing. Those definitions of those words are understandably fluid. And I personally can never have perfect knowledge to actually know whether a particular action. I don't actually always have the opportunity to be able to foresee what consequence of my action may well be. So this is always within the confines of what I can personally foresee as well. But I also acknowledge in myself that partially also through evolution, and all that can be dealt with empathy. Really, it's just empathy. I also understand that I am a tribal creature because I've evolved tribally, and that my primary tribe is always going to be myself, and then the people that I'm related to, and then the people that I love, and then the people that are in my community. Like there's concentric circles, right, of whom I'm going to care more about. I'm going to care more about my dog being injured than a bunch of people being injured that I don't know. And that's just the way we are, right? Because I know my dog better. So that's in conflict with my ideals, but that's very evolutionary understood, right? If a species doesn't combine empathy with some personal self-survival, then that species won't optimally survive. So we actually can see through evolution that you need to have both things at play. Some level of tribalism, some level of personal survival, and some level of, because being social, as Aron very well explained better than I ever could, that is our best survival trait. So you asked, at least I saw in the call, if there is no God, what do you hold yourself accountable to? I would say it actually doesn't really matter if, whether there's a God or not. Everyone comes up with their own thing that they hold themselves accountable to, and perhaps that's to nothing at all. Perhaps that's only to their own whims. I see not how that reflects on whether a God exists or not. Can you bring it to me full circle as to...
Yeah. There are questions I have, but I want to bring that to full circle just to kind of clarify the air on that. Basically, my idea of God is anything, or someone referring to their God is something that rules over you, that basically you submit to or hold yourself accountable to, that regardless of yourself, you will choose that over you. But it seems to me that
Okay,
you
so
said
you,
something interesting that
but you understand
would
that
choose
that
to.
sure,
Yep.
hold on, but you understand that has
Yeah, please.
nothing to do with what most people talk about when they talk about God. Most people are talking about a supernatural thing, not
Yeah, most of us
just
are not talking about the federal government. That's not a god.
Right. But
like
what I mean by that, this is we have the federal government first, and then we say it's good to
so.
listen to the federal government. So there's something
No, but
above us.
you're
I'm not
saying that
saying
you're saying that God is merely synonymous with your own personal ethic.
not necessarily. This is more of a piece of the puzzle, not the whole picture, right? So there is something, for example, you mentioned the government. There's something outside of us in a sense that would say it is good to listen to this government if they are doing good things for people.
No, 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 no. You don't get to say things like that because good is merely an expression of personal preference, right? Good is the extent we all describe good things as the extent to which we like them. So good is not an objective standard in any way until you've determined that there's a shared goal. So
yeah,
the
reason I mentioned federal government is because you said that God is whatever rules over you, and that's not an accurate definition.
I understand that, Aaron. Like I said, it's a piece of the puzzle, not the whole thing. But Paul, you said something about if we like it, then that's good. So there are not things that are good that we don't like.
No, I said if it best achieves our goals, if we deem something to be good to the extent to which it gets an outcome that we like. Now, I do not like exercise, but I attempt to do it on more than I want to, because an outcome that I want is to be able to live healthier than I do, right? So it's not that I like exercise. So it's all about, we have to agree. In order to agree that something is good, we have to agree that on a particular outcome by which we evaluate what is good or what is bad. So I'm just saying that good is merely a descriptor. It is not in itself an objective.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned something about your dog being harmed. You would care more about that than people dying in the street or something like that. A good amount of people dying.
I'm saying that I might.
Yeah. There's a bias toward those that we're familiar with. Whether it's other people or your dog, depends on the situation. If we're talking about people dying, most of us will have a moral obligation that we wouldn't have to make a choice between people dying and our dog dying. That's not realistic, right? When we have a chance to save a handful of people, if we can save our dog at the same time, we're definitely going to make space to save our dog.
So, Paul, would you agree with that as well?
I mean, I was just being realistic in that my personal ethic, my ideal ethic, that it's unmeetable by me because I also have the competing tribalism.
Yeah,
and the tribalism.
You got 10 children around you. You got 10 children around you, and they all need to be put onto this onto a box car pulling away from a tragic accident where there's like poison gas or whatever. Now, the furthest child from you is your own daughter. You can put on all those other kids before you get to her. Is that what you do?
Yeah, that's definitely a tough question.
Yeah.
I would, and kind of what Paul was saying, I would want to put all the kids on first, and then selfishly.
But your daughter's going to be on that car.
But you understand that everything Aaron and I have said can be completely true on the presumption that there is no supernatural God.
Yeah.
There's literally nothing that we've said in this conversation that requires a supernatural God. Are we eventually getting to the supernatural God?
Right. So let me do that again. The idea of there is something outside of us, right? That is so natural nature would say either preserve this person or preserve that person. Something outside of us, and you don't have to say it's supernatural, whatever it is. I just want to know what it is. something outside of us says,
No,
"Here's
we've
the
explained this.
thing
It's
that you
empathy. It's
probably."
empathy. Aaron explained this at length. It's empathy, and our because we are social species, we value those who do things beyond selfishness. So
Yeah,
it's
and
You hold
all
yourself
you have to do
accountable
is
to empathy.
extrapolate.
yeah, our social norms are outside of the individual. I don't know what the fixation is about something outside of us. If you're talking about individuals, the needs of society, the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few or the one. I mean,
Yeah.
it doesn't have to be a
So now
magical non-human thing.
that's fine. And I asked this earlier before. If the quote needs of the humans, right, are not in line with, I think you guys said you want to know more, as much true things as possible. Let's just say is not aligned with truth. Is there a call to stand up, or is it say, well, the needs of the human want this more, so let's do what the needs of the human want, rather than the true thing?
Now, we just mixed needs and wants. I
Okay, so
think that's significant.
let's move out of want and let's go for, well, I guess then that would be, you would have a certain opinion or an idea that would say, no, you guys may want this, you think you need it, but you really need this. The truth would say you really need
Yeah,
this,
Right. So
even though you.
so here's a great example.
If all y'all need something and I want something else, well then fuck me.
Right.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is that there are people do sometimes think they need something, and the majority of people think they may need something, but it's not what is actually really good for them. Would that be an accurate statement?
We've acknowledged that our knowledge is imperfect, and also our goals are sometimes imperfect. For example, climate change is a great example. So, if climate change predictions are correct, then we as a species should do something. But there can be a myriad of differing opinions, all of whom are well-meaning, about how to do something about that, right? Like that's just an imperfection. I mentioned that earlier. It's just an imperfection in our ability to always know what outcomes are.
Mm-hmm. So, and I guess, like I said, I was leaning on the question of the show, but I guess outright answering the question, I think a good reason to believe in a God, if a God does exist, would be to have a fully knowledgeable being that does know exactly what the right thing to do is, what people actually need, even though they may feel they want.
Is such a being? Let's say there is. Let's say there's a being who has who actually cares about the best possible outcome for species. Would you agree that that being is entirely useless if that being is unable to crystal clear articulate in a non-ambiguous way that advice?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say.
Yeah.
Okay. Do you think that we have a being who knows everything, who is able to give us perfect advice, and in a non-ambiguous, crystal clear way communicates that advice to us so that we can take that advice?
I'm convinced, yes.
Then why hasn't it ever happened?
I think it has, but people obviously they're just like, well, I don't. This being is not agreeing with me, so I don't really like it, so I'm going to ignore it.
How many major religions do we have?
A lot. I don't know.
Yeah. How many denominations of every major religion do we have?
More than
more
than the lot that I just
So would you agree that there is not crystal clear communication?
I think there is. I'm convinced there is. I used to
If
think
there
that there
was a
wasn't.
God who was capable of crystal clear communication, then why do we have all these different religions violently conflicting against each other in the name of the same God?
Because people want to do what they want to do. They think they know better. They want to do.
No. You think that the people who follow Islam. I'm assuming you're a Christian of some variety.
I am a Christian.
Okay, so you think that the people who are following Islam just want to sin?
I think they're convinced or rather, they want to be convinced of their own thing. Whether it's wanting to sin or not, they want to do their own thing, basically.
So just like the
You think
Christians,
that you think that they're wearing hijabs because they think that's cool and fun, and not because they think that they've been directly communicated by a god. In your head, they're wandering around going, "I know I'm deceived."
People, yeah.
you know, they say the
ahead.
exact same thing about you that you just said about them, right?
They can say it all the live long day, but I mean, I
And
deal with
so
Muslims
can
a
you.
lot, and
So can you.
So how
you're
can there
making
be
judgments against them? They're making the same judgments against you,
Mhm.
and there's only one explanation for how that can be. The common
Mhm.
God that
Well-
all of y'all believe in did not communicate any fucking thing with crystal clarity. That's why they're at war
Well,
with
I
each
don't
other. That's
necessarily-
why Christians are going to Muslim hell and Muslims are going to Christian hell.
Well, Christians in Islam will be able to will go wherever. They don't get eternal punishment because they're Christian. They believe in the way or whatever. But the thing is, I
And
don't
what
live
about
in a
Muslims?
yeah, Muslims are going to hell. But
Okay, so
um,
and the Muslim says that if you as a Christian, you may be one of the people of the book, but if you believe that God has partners or children, that's a damnable heresy. So you're going to Muslim hell.
yeah, they can say that all they want, but here's
And
the
you
thing,
can
though.
say all you want about your religion.
I hear you.
It's just as pig-headed. It's an empty assertion. You are stating things as
Well-
fact that you do not know to be fact.
Well, I don't live in a vacuum where I'm like, I just do my own Christian thing and I don't talk to atheists or Muslim or anything like that. I spend time with Muslims and I spend time with atheists and all this stuff.
And they're going to hell.
The result.
And it doesn't matter that
result-
they've dedicated their lives to the following of God as they understand it. They've dedicated their lives to this. So you think it's
and I was-
fair
and I was gonna
just
say
and
that-
right that they've made all these sacrifices and they've lived this pious life of charity and everything in the name of Islam, only to die and face St. Peter, and he says, "Whoop, sorry, you're a Muslim, you're going to hell."
Well, if they're deceived and they don't know any better, I believe God will have mercy. But
Well,
for the
then,
ones that know
aren't you
better,
forced-
Oh, wait. Hold on. You acknowledge that someone can be deceived.
yeah,
So there isn't a God who is communicating with crystal clarity.
Yeah, you're aware that the Bible also says that God has lied, and there are passages where God brags about lying.
okay. So,
But we're just going to pass over that.
when it,
We're going to say that God
Yeah, I
communicates
don't-
in crystal clarity, and it doesn't matter that He puts a lying spirit in the voice of the scribes.
yeah, that's what I've heard. I didn't hear anything about God saying He lied. But
Yeah.
the thing is,
Yeah, that
right?
God actually
True.
does brag about deceiving people. And if the scribe says things are not true, it's because I put a lying spirit into the scribes. Yes, this is God deceiving
Okay.
Yeah.
people, and there's a number of passages
I
on
wouldn't
this.
call
I
that
did a
bragging,
video on it.
but that's fine.
I did a video on this, the God who lies, where I list specific biblical references to the number of times that God lied.
I got it.
So I
got it.
scolded
wouldn't
the
call it
last
bragging.
I scolded the last caller for pitching that his religion, that was really just advocating his religion based on utility, that it would be, that he liked it, that it would be cool, that there might be some societal advantage. I'm now realizing that I feel like this call may be the same thing. You've now pitched, wouldn't it be
Oh, no, I
better?
don't-
Wouldn't it
I
be
don't follow
great?
Christianity because I think it's cool.
No, but I'm just saying your call so far has pitched to us, wouldn't it be good if there was an all-knowing God who could definitely point us towards some common goal that would be, maximally beneficial? And
No, I think there is.
I don't want to.
and
I don't want
think
to lose
it
the
is
fact that
good.
I don't want to lose out the fact that sure, I can maybe even agree. Hey, that would be awesome. And I already said though, it would only be awesome to the extent to which it's
That'd be
crystal
a good
clear.
reason. That would be one good reason to believe in God. Then.
No. That would be utility. That would just be merely saying, hey, it'd be neat. It'd be good. It'd be beneficial in some way. So you're just pitching utility.
Believe in God.
No. I'm not. I don't care. So maybe you don't know this about me. I do not care about the utility of a belief at all.
Yeah.
Don't care about the utility of the belief. one little bit. I care only to the extent that it can be demonstrated to be true.
Yep.
So if your call was here to Aron and I to say, one reason to believe in God is your life would be better for X, Y, and Z, then you're going nowhere. The reason to call Aron and I is say, go ahead.
Demonstrate it to be true wouldn't be a utility?
Not necessarily. So, for example, I had a cancer diagnosis to the extent where I was told I wasn't even going to live very long. The utility of the truth of that was far more beneficial than the utility of that. It turned out to be very problematic. And now I guess one could say, hey, and for the ultimately I was a lucky person and I did come through.
Yeah,
through incredible medical help. Thank you, Canadian healthcare. Appreciate you. I didn't go broke because of my cancer. Appreciate that. But I was on the cancer ward for years, and many people had terrible outcomes. But the truth of their diagnosis actually held very little utility for them, but it was still true.
Yeah.
So,
and I would
it holds you. Knowing something is true, I think, is a big utility. Like, especially you said you want to know as many true things as possible. I would say that would fall into the category.
Right, but that's not why. That's not why I want to. Well, Aron, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to say that in my perspective, only accurate information has practical application. So I don't want to be deceived, misled into believing something that is not evidently true. It doesn't matter to me what you believe. All that matters is why you believe it. What is the reason, and is it a reason sufficient that I should believe it too? And if it requires belief, regardless, if I have to suspend my understanding of reality to just believe things on an argument from authority, that's fallacious. Arguments from authority are worthless. I don't care about your assumed authority.
Got it. Yeah, no, I'm on the same page. Okay, so I just wanted to know what you guys hold you guys accountable, and kind of, like I said, lean on the question a little
so
bit.
Now let me just flip this back for a second. Can you acknowledge, Matthew, that the things that Aron and I expressed as the things we hold ourselves accountable to require no supernatural deity at all?
Require no supernatural deity.
Yeah, it's still true whether there's a God or not.
I would say that I guess I don't use that language of supernatural, but I would say it's outside of. Well, yeah, I wouldn't say it's not outside of nature. Yeah, I guess I don't really speak that way. But you asked something, Aron. What do you say? Whether is it still true whether there's a God or not?
Yeah.
Yeah. You can have empathy. Let's just say in a world where God doesn't exist.
Do you mean
I don't
this
think
one?
you would have anything, really. I don't think you would have anything because He created everything. So I guess I'm not trying to.
You're assuming your conclusion, which is the question-begging fallacy. And the question-begging fallacy is the fallacy of circular reasoning that is ubiquitous throughout all religious belief, not just Christianity. You're simply assuming what you want to be true and then asserting it as if it was true. Learn to think hypothetically and learn to weigh multiple hypotheses. In a world in which there is no God, it would look exactly like this world, and we would have things for the exact reason that we have things. Just without God, because God doesn't give us things. You want to say that a God created everything. In the alternate perspective, we don't have a God creating everything, but everything is here, different means, but ultimately we're still in the same condition.
Okay, no. When you explain it that way, like for some other reason, right, that we got where we are right now, then of course, and then the hypothetical just kind of answers itself, or it kind of creates its own situation, right? But
then we have to
reality,
look at what is the evidence for either hypothesis. And in one, you don't have any evidence, and in two, we have an overwhelming abundance of it.
I wouldn't say there's no. You're saying there's no evidence in the existence of God?
Yes. And not only is there no
So
evidence
if
for the existence of God, there is substantial evidence against the existence of God.
so hypothetically speaking, let's just say if we were to discover that God exists, wouldn't the things that are here, like the things that exist, wouldn't that be evidence of God's existence?
No. If the
Okay.
same fact
So
is still true in either paradigm, then it's not evidence.
mhm,
It's just a fact. A fact does not
mhm,
become evidence until it indicates one or eliminates the other.
mhm. And you wouldn't say that the letters of Peter, Paul, James, John, those things like that, that's not evidence of Jesus or God.
So
I
would
don't
you
think
accept
that
the Bhagavad Gita? Would you accept the Bhagavad Gita as evidence of Lord Krishna? Would you accept
No.
the Avestas as evidence of Ahura Mazda?
No. Oh, the
Well,
what?
then your Bible isn't evidence of God.
No. What did you say? The
and
what?
Matthew, I'll do you one better, Matthew. You don't have letters of Peter or John either.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So you said something else because I've read the Bhagavad Gita, so I don't believe in. But you mentioned something else after that.
Yeah, we brought it up a couple of times today, the Avestas of Zarathustra. I haven't read all of them. I've read
Mhm.
2 of them. I've read the Zend Avesta and I've read the Hadnak Nast. I can't remember if I've read any more because that was
Zoroastrian, for
VESTA.
those of us who don't pronounce as cool as Aron does.
VESTA.
Avesta, Avesta.
A
The most famous one being the Zend
VESTA.
Avesta. Yeah.
All right, I'll look into that.
Okay.
All right.
All right.
Appreciate
Are we done?
I think so. Thank
All
you.
right. Well,
Next time
good
I'm on the
talking
show,
to you.
Matthew, call me and ask me how we know that Peter and John didn't write any letters, because that'd be fun.
All right, sounds
Yeah.
great.
Next time.
Bye-bye.
Yep. Bye-bye.
All right, I've been on this show a number of times where we haven't had many theist callers, but when you get Paul on here, boy, you attack.
They all want to fight you. They don't care about me.
No, but they don't show up when I'm here and you're not. So
Oh,
I'm
well,
blame you.
I tweeted things, so yeah, we'll see.
Okay, so next up, we're talking with Jackie in Mississippi. Can you hear us?
Hello? I can hear you. How about you? Is everything going through fine?
Oh yeah.
Hi, Jackie.
Hey, so it says in my thing that I would like to discuss the case for religious ontology discussed by Plotinus.
Wait,
So,
did I
are
talk
either
to
of
you last time? Did I talk to you with Jimmy a couple weeks ago?
I talked to you with Jimmy. I forgot how long ago it was.
Yes,
yeah,
Paul.
and you're the guy who likes to bring up esoteric theology views that aren't really core to your own personal belief, but you just think that for some reason calling up the show to chat about esoteric theology is something that the audience might care about or might persuade us about something. Is that characterizing the kind of calls you make?
I mean, I like to talk about philosophy, but I don't think the philosophy I talk about is esoteric, and and these are pretty foundational to some of my views on ontology and metaphysics.
Oh wait, so the thing you want to talk about today is absolutely core to your belief in God, and if this was proved false,
it's a pretty strong
and if
part
this was
of
proved
why
false,
I believe in religion.
and if it was proved false, you would lower your confidence in the existence of God and your religion.
Yeah, I would lower my confidence in my metaphysical belief in God and my understanding of religion and society and religious.
Okay, so it's at least that important. Okay, go.
So, are either of you gentlemen familiar with Plotinus and Neoplatonist philosophy in general?
No.
I see. So basically, the essential idea that Plotinus put forward is the idea of the one. So basically, Plato talks about the world of forms and the absolutes and all this. And Plotinus took it and basically created the idea that there's a essential one being, a one ontology, which sort of, we'll say, illuminates the rest of the world. And basically, so there's 3 hypotheses. There's first of all, there's just the one, and then there's the intellect, which is pretty hard to explain because, generally speaking, Neoplatonic philosophy does involve some esoteric concepts, but and then there's how that interacts with the physical world, the forms that presents stuff to us. And basically, I'm more of a philosopher of being in the Parmenian school compared to the philosophies of becoming put forward by people like Gilles Deleuze, Nietzsche, Heraclitus, etc., because I believe there is unity of phenomenology that people experience, and this unity of phenomenology points to metatruths, which are true.
So, Jackie, I need to interrupt you for a sec, not because of your ideas, but just technically. I don't know if your gain is too high, or if you're on a weird microphone, or something's happening that a lot of your words are getting lost in static. So, unfortunately, it's going to be very hard for Aron and I. And you're speaking very quickly, which is great because it's a little bit boring. So you need, but unfortunately, I cannot understand all the words you're saying. So if you can do anything to improve your sound, that would be helpful.
Okay, can you hear me better now?
So much better.
Okay, good. Basically, did you catch the part where I was arguing that unity of phenomenology across cultures?
Oh, it's going bad again. Whatever you did, it stopped working.
Okay, is this working?
That is. So if you just whatever you're doing, just hold exactly there.
Okay. So what I was arguing is that unity of phenomenology across cultures points to a philosophy of being rather than a philosophy of becoming.
Okay.
So basically that sort of argues against the sort of postmodern Deleuzian atheist standpoint that there is no meta-narrative.
What about the atheist standpoint is postmodern?
Well, the atheist viewpoint is that there's no meta-narrative, right? That's weird.
That we definitely actually do. Well, I believe I'm going to speak more broadly than Aron because Aron has a more specific view than I do. But more broadly, an atheist in broad sense would say we have no evidence of a meta narrative.
Yeah.
Well, the meta narrative, I would argue. So, if you guys are familiar with Carl Jung's psychoanalysis or analytic psychology, there are these archetypes which Jung and others in the Jungian tradition have analyzed, which ring true across society. So, for example, the hero archetype and the archetype
Joseph Campbell, all cool, but that doesn't. That's a meta narrative. If you were not to say, does humanity have a meta narrative? I might have gone along with you. So I thought you were talking about on a cosmos level that there was a meta narrative. No. So humanity, does humanity have a meta narrative, and do we have tales that ring true to us? Sure. Because that only makes sense because we share genetics. Carry on.
Yes, and it's not quite clear that we can distinguish anything that humanity experiences from what's actually true of the cosmos, right? Like one of the things Kant and
say that again. Say that again. Hold on. You can't move on if I don't understand. Say that again in a way I will understand.
It's not evident that what we as a humanity collectively experience isn't true of reality qua reality.
But you understand that's you're just asserting that there's no evidence that doesn't hold. But do you have evidence that it does hold?
Well, so basically, the truth, as far as I'm concerned, the Darwinian definition of truth is what's beneficial for collective survival as a species.
No.
Excuse me, where can I look up where can I look up the Darwinian definition of truth? Because I have a very different definition of truth than what you just described.
Well, that's one thing I've heard Jordan Peterson talk about, the difference between Darwinian truth and Newtonian truth. Because Newtonian truth is...
Yeah, I don't care what Jordan Peterson says.
I don't either.
What we're talking about. So the truth is what the facts are, what we can show to be true, not whatever else we might assume or imagine beyond or instead of that. That's the realm of religion. So when you say something is true or the truth, you had better be able to show the truth of it, the evidence leading to that conclusion.
Well, the truth of, say, religious narratives is that because
Is that
they
it
have
can't.
wrong.
The
And
truth of a
I'll get to
religious
that.
narrative is that they can't show that there's any truth to it.
Okay, I'm getting there. So the truth of the religious narratives is that the sort of modern Lacanian and postmodern psychoanalysts like Julia Kristeva will say, well, there's no meta-narrative that people are aiming towards that points to a unity of the transcendent, right? But one thing Jung and to a lesser extent, Jean Piaget and the structuralists and constructivists pointed out is that the way human beings develop and construct models of truth, Piaget's genetic epistemology, involves engaging with others in society, and these show broader truths that are cross-cultural. It's not individual.
But hold on. Yeah. But I granted this. It feels like half an hour ago. I granted that humans make sense of come to common ways of making sense of the world and come to common narratives and have common values. That doesn't. You need to bring us now to, okay, humans describe things in common ways and all that kind of stuff. That does not have any bearing on a supernatural entity.
Yeah, and your citations are somebody who doesn't know what they're talking about says this, some other person who doesn't know what they're talking about says that. I don't care. But let's talk about what they can show to be true.
Well, do you not believe it can be demonstrated that there's order in the universe as opposed to disorder?
To a degree, there is order in some things and disorder in others, and our cosmos is a case of random boiling chaos, in which some things have temporarily achieved a balance, which is why they can persist as long as they have, but nothing's absolutely permanent. So there are very few absolutes.
You'd have to define order.
The whole scientific enterprise is grounded on the ability that wrestling with the tohu vavohu, using biblical terms, by confronting chaos, we will extract order for it, and we'll create models which represent truth, and truth will set us free in humanity, right? The idea that
none of the science classes I ever took said anything like that. We were all supposed to be tentative. We weren't supposed to believe anything absolutely. We weren't supposed to believe anything. We were supposed to question our assumptions and hold only to those things that appear to be compelling, the evidence that is compelling, and only hold to that to the degree that we can show that it is consistent. And if it turns out that our information is incorrect, or that our evidence was not as good or maybe truthful as what we thought it was once upon a time, then we will, like in my case, for example, once I realize that an argument is that my evidence is invalid or was shown to be a hoax or what have you, I don't have to change my beliefs. I have already stopped believing it. When I find out that it wasn't as well supported that it wasn't supported well enough to accept it in the first place, I already reject it. I don't believe it anymore. So you're coming at me with people who don't know what they're talking about, who say different things I don't care about, and nobody can show the truth of their statement, and I can't pretend to have any interest in what you're saying.
I agree with you that you shouldn't accept anything until there's sufficient evidence pointed towards, and which is why I'm presenting sociological data about how faith in the transcendent transforms people's lives to things like individuation, respect for human dignity, etc. And these
and I granted this. I granted this so long ago, and are you ever going to get to the point where you say, therefore, something supernatural?
Well, sort of like Kant talked about in the Critique of Pure Reason. There's the phenomenal world and noumenal world, but the only reason we care about the phenomenal world is because it's for our continuation as a species. And so even if the stories in the Bible aren't literally true, they represent a metaphysical substrate which
Jackie, hold on. What did I ask? Just curious if words are coming out of my mouth in a way that can be understood, and maybe things are. What did I ask you?
You asked how I go from the utility of religion to our survival and to our phenomenology, and how that represents. Does it actually point to anything supernatural? What evidence can I provide that demonstrates anything transcendent metaphysically?
Okay, cool. All right, so you vaguely you yeah, okay. Go get there. Do it. Cut to the end. ... Let's go.
The transcendent is that which is not which is not constrained by time and space. And so if religious archetypes are beyond time and space, they represent eternal truth, or truths which consistently.
Okay, hold on. Hold on. You and I.
You're using the word empty. What you're using the word truth in place of empty, unsupported assertion.
Is the divinity of the individual, is the idea that the individual is sovereign and has dignity because they're a human being, an empty assertion? Is the idea that truth will set you free an empty assertion?
Even if
Those
that's true, that doesn't speak to what you were just saying. The truths
that's what religion
that you just
says.
mentioned are not truths at all. They are assumptions, and they're not supported. They're asserted, but not supported. And you know what we'll call it when you assert something is true that is not evidently true, or when it's not even possible, when you pretend to know things you don't know? You know what we call that? We don't call it truths. There's quite a different word. Matter of fact, it's the very opposite word of truth. We call those lies.
Do you believe the idea that individual human beings have dignity is a lie? Is that the?
I don't. So
not remotely what I just said. I said empty, unsupported assertions of impossible absurdity are lies. They are not truths.
Well, what I just said was what religion says, and that is a truth.
No, but we're not having the same, Jackie. We're not having the same conversation.
Yeah.
If you are basically, again, you are advocating for utility of religion. And I keep asking, does that mean that there is a supernatural entity out there who presumably created the universe? An actual being? You are giving me weird Jordan Peterson stuff.
There is a being who created the universe. It's
you are not getting there.
Being there.
Right now you're just another assertion. You've just made an assertion with nothing to back it up but your own assumptions.
What is Dasein? What is the being that illuminates all other beings? What is being?
I don't know that there is one. Like this is Jackie, tell me why I should think there is one, and then we will talk about who it is.
So are either of you gentlemen familiar with Heideggerian ontology?
No.
You're on your own, Paul. I can't.
Well, Jackie, go ahead. One last shot. You need to connect. You need to, in this instance, connect the dot for me from anything you've said to why I, Paul, should think that there is a supernatural being that created the universe. Go.
Okay. So in Heidegger's book, Being and Time, he discusses the question about Dasein, or being in the world, and authenticity. And basically, one of Heidegger's concepts is that the problem with contemporary science and contemporary philosophy is that it focuses on individual beings, but it doesn't focus on the being itself. And I would argue religious cosmogonic models and metatruths represent being itself, or how human beings understand being itself. Now, I disagree with Heidegger's conclusions in how he applies that politically. And so I'm more sympathetic to say someone Karl Jaspers because of his anti-totalitarian tendencies. But I do believe there is some transcendent thing that all human beings classify as being itself, and is outside of spatiotemporality.
So I understood your question. Everything you just said came to me differently. Paul asked a question, and you used 50 words to say no. Is there a reason to believe this God exists? mumbo jumbo bullshit. If somebody, some philosopher said who doesn't know what they're talking about says this, somebody else who doesn't know what they're talking about says that, blah 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 blah. Nothing gets to the point. So the answer is question. No, that's what you gave us. No, there's no reason to believe that a God exists.
You basically, Jackie, you gave you're ended with therefore you think it's true. My question was, why should I think that it's true? So answering the question why you think it's true doesn't help.
The reason I think you should think it's true is because the question of being itself is one of the most fundamental questions of metaphysics, and engaging with being itself.
No. You don't know me very well, but that's fair because you don't know me. That's fine. Don't care about that. What I care about is what can be hard demonstrated. I don't have that kind of existential, so I am okay with energy or whatever our cosmos fundamental principle is being a brute fact.
Yeah, and
I don't spend any time wondering about what's beyond that brute fact, because I came to realize that all gods are brute facts.
What you said is the most fundamental is to me irrelevant.
So, cool. Jackie, you maybe just called into two hardheads who are just, not as intellectually curious as you. Or
I don't think you're hardheads. I just don't think I'm communicating.
Or you are perhaps ruminating about things that don't matter, and everyone in the audience can figure out
the question of being gets us nowhere. We have a universe in which a God created everything, and in which a God exists, or outside of it exists, envelops us, however you want to put it. And we have a universe in which God is entirely imaginary. The question of being remains in both cases. So that doesn't get us to whether there's a God or not.
Well, God's traditionally defined as being itself, or the basis for being itself.
No, now you're trying to define your God in existence.
Yeah, your God is a brute fact, right? Your God is a brute fact.
Yeah, a non-spatiotemporal being itself.
Yeah, so brute fact. And I think that energy is has equal explanatory power and can be a brute fact. So, and there's probably lots of other people who could come up with brute facts that have equal explanatory power. So where does that get us?
Yeah, and I won't even give brute fact. The God is an empty assertion. It's not a fact. It's just assumed.
Well, but in his, if I'm doing an internal critique, right, his worldview, God necessarily is just a brute fact.
Yeah, and in mine, it's completely irrelevant.
Right. Well, obviously. But so you understand why everything terminates in a brute fact. And so this whole existential angst about being isn't resolved no matter the worldview. There's no potential worldview that answers beyond brute fact.
The angst is helped by religion. So if you're familiar with Soren Kierkegaard,
that's utility. That's utility. That's not solved. That's just you're talking about a way to alleviate the angst. So
yeah, and if you're familiar with the book by some other guy who doesn't know what they're talking about, well, I don't care.
You're saying a solution to angst specifically, and Kierkegaard in his writings talks about the solution to angst being a leap of faith towards the eternal, and by taking this leap of faith, by taking care of it.
If I said I'm looking for a solution to angst, I misspoke. I don't have any angst. I thought I was quite clear. I have zero angst about the brute fact.
Yeah,
I'm not looking for.
You are demonstrating. All of your arguments are demonstrating why I have virtually no interest in philosophy. You are the example of why I don't pursue philosophy.
But it is possible, Jackie, that Aron and I are the wrong ones. So carry on. I don't think we are, but you can, perhaps we'll be one day convinced otherwise. But for now, we don't care, and you didn't give us a reason to care. So I think we got to move on.
Yes, indeed.
Okay.
All right, so we are fortunate in that we've had a number of theists on here, and I know we've got two atheists been waiting since the beginning. We got one more theist in the queue, and I'm going to bring that person up. And we are speaking with, can you get a more theistic name, Joseph in Indiana?
Yes, I describe. First of all, I have to mute my TV. There we go. I am a chicken theist because I've spent 80 years denying that I'm in my head that I'm atheist. But I think it's because I'm afraid to say I'm an atheist for some reason. I recognize that I don't see any evidence that there is a theist.
So, Joseph, what does the word atheist mean to you?
It means not believing that there is a God.
Bingo.
Okay. Does that and it sounds like you think that accurately describes your beliefs? Is that correct?
Yeah, I'm calling to for why I'm afraid to say yes to that question. Or at least I can't bring myself quite to do it.
Yeah, I feel you. I was raised being told all kinds of negative things about what an atheist is. I didn't identify as atheist for the longest time because of it.
Joseph, what would go wrong with your life if you decide never to use the label for yourself? If you just continue to hold the position, but just don't, if you don't like that label, and if it bothers you and it gives you, discomfort, I don't know anyone that is going to fault you for not adopting a label when you have rationally come to a specific position. Is someone pressuring you to call yourself an atheist?
Not at all. In fact, I'd say that for the past few years, since my wife died 2 years ago, almost, I haven't gone to church or contributed any money to church because I don't see that they may do some social things, but I can, there are plenty of other organizations which do good social things too, without making me pay higher property taxes because the church don't pay. By the way, if you're looking for a reason for the show, it is to get rid of stuff like that. I don't see why. I don't see why they should be exempt from taxation.
Yeah, Aron and I we go further. I think Aron and I both would call ourselves anti-theists, and basically we would consider ourselves activists against the harm that religion causes in general. No one need go that far. Aron and I do. Do you know what the word is, Joseph?
If I could clarify that just for a moment, I mean, at the anti-theism that I think the way that Paul is thinking about this is that when we weigh everything out, and you have the things that people will point to that religion does, like a sense of community or whatever in a given area or what have you, the charity bake sales or whatever. When you weigh all of that versus the evil that churches do, it comes out as a net negative. That we would be better off without the religions, without the churches.
And I would actually go further and say even that honestly, even if it was net positive, the fact that it teaches people to adopt belief methodologies, adopt epistemologies that lead them to conclude false things, that in itself is enough of a harm for me to be an anti-theist. Sorry, Joseph, we gave our little soapboxes there. Please proceed.
Okay. In addition, I agree with everything you say about God being an evil dick. Because he's the son of a bitch who put a brain tumor into my 30-year-old sister.
I'm so sorry.
Yeah. Now that was 50 years ago. I guess I haven't completely gotten over it, but left her daughter an orphan, basically, and so God's going around giving a strong young woman brain cancer and creating an orphan, and and mention all the dead Amalekites.
Yeah, if God was real, he would have a lot to answer for sure. We definitely agree with that. So, Joseph, is primarily the reason you're concerned though is that word and that label, and that you were feeling discomfort, or was there something else?
The discomfort is wondering why I don't just take the logical step from saying, okay, no one has shown me a God. If he exists, he's a horror. And yet, why I won't take the step. I've broken away from my former church, where I used to be a Sunday school teacher at a younger age.
Yeah, that's it. It's cultural conditioning.
Mhm.
Now, for me,
Well,
I was told all the time that atheists know that there is no God, and that an atheist had to have the position or a statement that an atheist isn't an atheist unless they say that there's no God. Which, how would you know that? And it wasn't until I was much older before I realized that an atheist simply does not have a belief that there is a God.
Okay, that makes me an atheist. I say that I have to know that there's no God. I can't really know that any better than I can know that there is one.
Yeah, so you would be both agnostic and atheist.
I think so. Yeah.
Yep.
I think I've got to think about it yet.
All right. Well, have we helped you out at all?
Yeah, you pointed my mind in that direction.
All right. Well, thank you very much.
Very
I got a couple
good.
of other people have been waiting here since the beginning, so we'll go ahead and take them on. And thank you for calling in.
Thanks, Joseph.
Thanks.
Good luck.
All right. So now we have a couple of atheists, and I'm going to start with Anders. Anders in Sweden. Can you hear us?
Yes, I hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Indeed.
Great. Yes, the question is, there's something called Clifford's maxim, which says that it's always wrong to believe something on insufficient evidence. And
Well,
I
I'd say it
wonder
was unwise.
What? Sorry?
I would say it's unwise. Generally.
Unwise, but is it wrong?
Well, it depends, Anders. So you can imagine a scenario, right, where there are, early hominids on the savannah, and there's a rustle in the bushes, right? Now, some of the people may believe that that's a problem and run away, and some of them will not think that and they'll stay, right? Well, obviously, the people who run away, they're going to have an advantage just statistically, because they're always going to escape the danger versus, there may never have been a danger, but
right. Pessimist.
So this is kind of a weird question when you want to express it in terms of wrong or right in any kind of way. Like it's kind of a situational advantage versus how much evidence should be sufficient for warrant, right? So it depends. There's other factors at play, I guess, is all I'm saying.
Yeah, and
Okay.
one of the other things where I think Paul and I are deviating a little bit is in the context that we're talking about. I mean, I would say that if you're using belief, if you're determined to believe something that is not true, well, then you're not being open to the potential that you're wrong. You're not investigating that belief. Belief means that you're gonna make that assumption, regardless, and you should be open to when you may be wrong.
Okay.
That's the only way your information is and your understanding is going to improve.
Yes, I'm very. It's important to me that I am morality is very important to me, and I'm been stuck on this. I'll think over what you said. Thank you very much.
All right. Well, thank you very much for holding on there.
There you go.
Yep,
Yeah,
good talking to you.
And yeah, Aron, you correctly identified that I was talking about people. You could assess different probabilities at different levels, and so you and I were actually definitely talking about different things. So well pointed out.
All right. Well, thank you, sir. And now we've got one last caller in the queue. This is Chris in Oregon. And I know I said that wrong.
Hello.
I used to live in Oregon. Yeah.
Yes, it's
Oregon
Oregon.
fought Godzilla back in the 1960s, I remember.
Hello
Chris,
there,
you there?
both of you. Yes, I am. Hi. How are you? Great to speak to both of you. I've been listening to both you, Aron, and you, Paul, for over the last year, and you guys have really helped me out getting my foot out of the religious muck, as it was. I just wanted to share something about a supposed miracle I thought I had. And I did have a question later about what to do with anomalous experiences. So the first one, about 2009, I had been underemployed for a very long time. And a cop pulled me over through a late yellow light, and he gave me a $400 ticket. I didn't have $400. I had been very depressed from not being employed, and I was just going to go home drunk and pop some pills because I was going to be so depressed. I knew this was going to happen. When the cop was coming up to my car, I prayed harder than I've ever prayed before, like a white-hot needle of focus, right? Like my brain is going to make this happen. The police officer gives me the ticket. I go home, and the next day I wake up because it's blacked out, drunk. And then I looked at the ticket, and the ticket was on a holiday. So they don't do, here in Oregon, we don't do traffic tickets on holidays, and they don't redo them. So all of a sudden, I'm out of a ticket. I don't have to pay $400, and I'm convinced that God's saving me for something else.
Okay.
Now, as a D&D, as a D&D player, I kind of realized that the mathematical odds, it wasn't like a 1 in a million chance. It was like 1 in 15 chance that I might actually land on a holiday because there's multiple holidays in a month. So I had to sit down and go, this isn't a miracle at all. I roll D20s all the time and get a D20. So in a way, D&D helped me figure out that no, I wasn't blessed by God or Christ or anything like that. That it was just a coincidence. So I'm maybe some of your faith-based listeners might hear that story, and maybe it sounds maybe familiar to them, how they convinced themselves that someone was interacting with them when in fact they weren't.
Yeah.
And then on the other half of it's you get into self-deception pretty easily when you have faith.
Mm-hmm.
That's what faith
is.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, absolutely it is self-deception. On the other hand of all of that, what do you do if you have an anomalous experience, such as perhaps seeing a figure moving around, or voices, or perhaps you see something that someone might say it's a ghost, but it might not be a ghost. I'm just curious about that, because I've seen 2 UFOs in my life. I'm not saying that they're aliens. I'm just saying I don't know what I saw. But I did see some stuff when I was younger, and I don't know if I can shake that stuff out of my head. Exactly.
I feel you. I was a neo-pagan spiritualist throughout my youth. And one of the things that all brands of faith do, and this includes going for like Wicca and the occult and just any brand, is you're encouraged to make yourself see what is just beyond what your eyes can physically see. Whether we're talking about auras or spirits or what have you. So you don't realize it. You're certainly not in the time, but you're whatever slight hallucination you might have had, just a trick of the light, you're going to play on that and enhance it in your mind. The more important thing is you can give some, you can say, well, what if I really saw something? Okay, well then we know we've got 2 hypotheses. We always have to weigh 2. And believers typically don't. They just go with their own conclusion and find whatever else supports that. But if we're going to weigh two hypotheses, one of them is that it's a real thing that you saw, and the other one is that it was a hallucination of some type. It might not have been it might not have been a trick of the mind. It might just be the way that the light was playing and the object against the light against the back of the white wall, whatever. Right? We know that people will see things that aren't there sometimes. They also see things that are there. So we've got two different hypotheses. Which one is supported? So do we have sufficient reason to believe that could be a spirit, a ghost, or whatever that you saw? And now, to my experience, speaking now, as opposed to when I was in my 20s and didn't know fucking anything, but speaking now, I've come to realize that we don't have any of the evidence of supernatural spirits, non-corporeal bodies, immaterial things that I used to think that we did. I used to think that people commonly saw ghosts, and I used to think that they were parapsychologists that actually had jars of ectoplasm in their offices,
like Ghostbusters, right?
Exactly, because before the movies Ghostbusters came out, I can tell you, living in spiritual Los Angeles in the 1970s, dude, there was that was just a common belief everybody had. So it's hard to get out of this cultural conditioning where it doesn't matter what religion you were raised in most of the time.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you don't need to doubt. You don't need to doubt anomalous experiences. I also had many Christian experiences, right? That I look back now, and what I don't doubt that I had those experiences. What I doubt is the attribution, right? I was unjustified in attributing the experience to the thing that I was planning. So if you saw things or heard things, I would definitely encourage you to look up like neurology about how our vision works and how our hearing works. Like you just, as soon as you start getting into the science at all, man, the fact that it falls apart, right? So doubt those attributions, whether they're yours or someone else's. And if you're talking to someone else, you don't have to deny that they experienced the thing, because personal experience is really all that we can know for sure. So, but that's how I worked through it. Was just like, oh, I'm attributing this to, as you said, you were attributing the holiday thing to being God, when you realize that statistically it's not that uncommon. So anyway, sounds like you're on the right track, and Aron gave a fabulous answer. So
he did. Thank you both again for all the work that you guys have done. You've helped this former preacher's kid get out of the bad rut. So appreciate it.
Okay. Thank you very much for that.
All right.
Have a good one. Go ahead and let you go. Thank you for good talking to you. And we've got one more in the queue. We just lost somebody, unfortunately. But we have Matt in Australia.
Hey.
How you do?
Hey, yeah, good. So I have a question, sort of asking you as atheists, but also what you would have said as Christians.
Okay.
Go for it.
So you would say that the Bible is the only source of his existence or of his miracles. Would you say that?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit there. Can you? I just want to make sure. It sounds like a very precise question, so I want to make sure I'm hearing it correctly.
Yep. So you're saying that the Bible or the New Testament is the only sources that we have of his A, existing, and B, did miracles.
Is the Bible the only source of miracles? No, there's lots of holy books that claim miracles. The Quran, for example, said that King Solomon had genies working for him, that he had the magical power to make the wind blow, and that he had the Dr. Dolittle ability to talk to animals.
No, I'm talking about Jesus' miracles.
Yeah. Man having a conversation with an ant in one surah. Hired a flock of eagles to dive bomb elephants with rocks from the sky.
Yeah, no, a lot of books say a lot of things. I'm talking about Jesus.
Yeah.
His miracle.
Okay, so you're talking specifically about the miracles of Jesus.
Yeah.
So it's a bit of a nuanced, complicated question. The Bible, I saw in your thing, the Bible isn't one source. I literally famously have my little jingle for the Bible tells me so, which often,
Yes, I know.
is indicating that's me cheeky kind of often saying you have only one source. But you do need to be nuanced in that the Bible, you are correct, is a collection of books, and so that there is potential multiple source notions for some of the things. The question is, where did they get that from, and what is their source? So there's certain specific things. So, like, say for example, the Holy Spirit coming on Pentecost, right? There we have only one source for that. That is Acts, right? So then I hold up my mug and say, or the Bible tells me so, the only place. When you get into, if you want to allow some of the New Testament studies to say, well, Paul, for example, wrote his letters beforehand, and Paul clearly had a tradition of Jesus's resurrection, then it's kind of tricky to say that, like the gospel.
Can't hear you, Paul.
So I lost you there for a second, but I'm back.
Okay. Paul, you
No.
still with us?
Still can't hear you.
Oh, Paul's gone.
Okay. And I don't know where, I can't pick up where Paul was going because I have no idea where he was headed with that. Yeah. I love the faces he makes when he's trying to look for stuff on his screen. Yeah, I know he can hear us.
Looks like he's muted.
All right.
Yeah, it looks that way.
How about
So, yeah, but there you are.
Yes.
There you are. We hear you again.
now? So where I was rambling with all that was this to say, I really don't actually love it when atheists or non-Christians are a little bit brute in sometimes throwing out, even though it's my slogan, for the Bible tells me so. You just need to be a little bit more careful about what the claim is. And so I don't know if that answers your question in any way, but most of the time the answer is yes. Most of the time the Bible is our one and only source for, like, walking on water or specific healings, or if you want to, like, feeding of the 5,000. Like, you absolutely could say, yeah, the Bible's the only source, and even though it's in multiple Gospels, the Gospels are clearly literarily dependent on each other, all four of them. Don't let them tell you that John isn't, because John absolutely is literary dependent on the others. So in that way, it comes down to, well, no, they're sharing either a common literary source or a common oral tradition. Does that in any way answer your question, Matt?
I don't know, to be honest.
Okay. Sorry.
I think I get what you're saying. Okay. We'll go to my other question. Is what about the apocryphal gospels?
Well, if you're
Like,
talking about the Bible is one
if they were
source.
written at about the same time, yeah, the Bible is one source. Let's say it is.
Right.
Are they another source?
So the apocryphal gospels.
It depends on who you ask. Do you ask a Jewish person or a Christian?
Oh, the Jewish person would say none of the apocryphal gospels. The apocryphal books are different. The gospels, so they're written anywhere from late, like 2nd century, depending on which ones you're talking about, to all the way to, like, 9th century, right? Like, you get different gospels of Judas Iscariot and gospels of Pilate and gospels of, so again, you need to be a little bit more precise. Some of
I need to look into
the four gospels we have are, I think most scholars would agree, are the earliest written. Now, what I observe when I read the apocryphal gospels, so for example, you have the Gospel of Thomas and the Gospel of James, and those, all of a sudden, like, everything gets bigger. Every single time a new one gets written, the stories get more elaborate. Jesus becomes 50 feet tall. There's a talking cross. Peter is healing fish from the dead. They fight dragons. Like, the further on you go, right, the later they're written. And so in my view, you can plot a graph, right? Like Mark is by far the most humble of claims, and of the four, Matthew and Luke add more, and in John, suddenly Jesus was there when the world was created, when the other gospels seem to know nothing about this, right? And
kind
so,
of in the same vein, if you saw a pirate movie made in the 1950s, and then you saw the best pirate movies of the 1970s, and then the best pirate movies of the 1990s,
right?
Yeah.
So
the example I was kind of thinking. So the example I was thinking of is like Superman. He started off, he couldn't fly, he could just jump. He had limited powers.
Yes, very good.
But as the stories went on, he got more and more powerful.
Exactly. This Superman
as you
example
do.
is perfect. And that is what you see as the apocryphal gospels go on. And that is why I actually was tweeting about some apocryphal gospels earlier this week, coincidentally. And Christians were getting very angry at me for talking about Thomas fighting dragons. They're like, well, that's not in the Bible. But I'm like, but Christians who believe just like you do felt like they wrote this, right? They wrote it to be believed. So working backwards, why would we, how can we know which parts were historical nuggets and which parts were legendary development? It's
I'm
because
properly into when they were written, so that is something I should look into more.
You should,
That's
and there's
point.
a whole long list of them, and potentially the 2nd century ones have a better chance of having historical kernel than the 9th century ones. I think, that would make sense.
That makes perfect sense. Yeah.
Did that help answer your question at all?
That answered that question, yes.
Okay, and so, but this first one, the Bible isn't the Bible being the single source for Jesus. Jesus is, depending on how you want to clarify it, Jesus is mentioned a few times by secular historians. So you do have to do something with that. If you're now, Jesus mythicists have, I think, well thought out answers to how to deal with it. But it would be erroneous to say that the Bible was the only place that Jesus was mentioned, because Josephus and Tacitus and Suetonius and a few others that are within living memory do mention him. So just don't overpromise the limitations. Now they won't tell you that Jesus did miracles, and they won't tell you that Jesus rose from the dead or anything like that. They might just acknowledge that there was a troublemaker named this guy. So
I like to put it as
there's more evidence that the guy existed, but
go ahead.
I've seen other sources of people who were a bit later, but are telling stories about the guy, but not that the guy was God or walked on water or all that stuff.
Agreed.
Yeah, he was a faith healer, and he was an exorcist. He was a cult leader, and he didn't know the causes of the diseases he pretended to cure. He blamed diseases on demons.
Mm-hmm. He famously gave the advice not to wash your hands before you eat. That was good.
Yep. All right. So are we good? Have we? All right, because I got a couple more in queue, and I'm going to go ahead and get to them.
Okay. Thanks, Matt.
That's my questions enough that I can think about it some more. Yep.
Awesome.
Thank you kindly. All right. So now we are going to be talking with John. John is that Michigan?
Yes, it is Michigan.
Yep. How do you do?
I'm doing fantastic. How are both of you?
It's all right. It's all right. I saw the question in the queue. I want to hear you talk about that for a moment.
Oh, I'm moving a bunch of stuff out of the house, and I found all of my homeschool worksheets going through evolutionary science, and it's pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I was fortunate enough that while almost nobody tried to teach me evolution in middle school or high school, they did when I was in 2nd grade, and that helped a lot. There was somebody who knew what the fuck in 2nd grade. I mean, I don't know what would happen if I had been deliberately misled by teachers.
Somebody in the 2nd grade let you know that wasn't correct?
Somebody my teacher in the 2nd grade, I had a couple of good ones, and one of them gave me a book on dinosaurs, and it included a cladogram, or a dendrogram, if you will, and it showed how everything was connected. And of course, goats and sheep are more closely related to each other than either one is to cows, but goats and sheep and cows are more closely related to each other than any of them are to horses and rhinos and tapirs. Yeah, I got to see the things that made sense. So phylogeny has kind of, from that moment, from second grade, has always been an interest of mine.
I would have liked to have gotten into it at second grade. It took until 8th.
Yeah. So what happened with you?
I started hearing evolution described in ways other than how the creationist textbooks described it. And I'm like, I have two different things here. What's going on? And
yeah,
just asking, like, hey, did we still have that creation textbook? I'm curious what that says. My parents would get mad at me for it, like, oh, what, evolution? So I was that piqued my interest pretty immediately.
At least they didn't say evolution.
Right, evolution.
Or like the first caller today, saying that there's no such thing as evolution because he doesn't accept what the definition of evolution is.
Well,
yeah.
So John, you were still in grade school when this was happening?
Right.
Awesome. I was in my 40s.
Not awesome.
I was in my 40s.
I guess in that relative to that, yes, absolutely.
Right. So I up until I was, when I was 39, I thought dinosaurs were on the ark. I was walking around as an adult human with that belief in my head, right? So I'm with you on the anger and the embarrassment, and now I literally publicly put my face out and let people know as a cautionary tale, don't be me. So I'm excited for you and proud of you and envious. So I mean, it sucks every year lost to it. Absolutely sucks, and I very much empathize. But
yeah, I
go
was
ahead,
lucky.
Aaron.
I was 14 years old. I was in middle school, and everybody I knew in the world was a creationist, so far as I knew, except for my second grade teacher. Everybody I ever met, all creationists. I was the only person who understood what evolution was, much less accepted it. But I also believed that there was a worldwide flood because everybody lies about all the evidence of the flood. So here I am, 14, I'm in middle school, and I mentioned something about the Great Flood, and my atheist teacher reveals himself by laughing at me. There was no damn flood. That's not even possible. And to be rebuked with such disdain as that prompted me to think about something I'd never thought about before. And I realized in an instant he was right. How the fuck do you flood a globe?
Exactly. I don't know. It's just hard. This is all in my own, 8th grade writing. It's all in my, like the answers I gave. Oh, why is this wrong? How is the hyena and a whale related? It's like, oh, obviously they're not because blah, blah, blah. And it's just frustrating to see it in my own writing. And my parents have been big on, oh, we didn't indoctrinate you or anything. Well, okay. What is a different word for being exclusively taught one thing, not being allowed to challenge it for, 16 years or way longer? How can that not be that? And what is indoctrination?
So one of the things that helps me, so I was in a similar boat. One of the things that I think about was like, did they have the evidence for evolution and withhold it from you? Or like, did they honestly believe it? And if so, they were in their own way a victim then too, right?
I feel for him, but then, around 8th grade, I tried talking about a lot of divergence, tons of arguments, and I could explain anything possible. it just hasn't gone well since then.
Are you still financially dependent on your parents?
No.
Okay. My advice always shifts based on whether you're still financially dependent, because obviously that makes it big deal. So what are you struggling?
Yeah.
Are you wanting basically commiseration? Because I'm happy to commiserate with you on how much this sucks, at length. But were you looking for something beyond commiseration today that we could help you with?
Is there anything like productive I could think about this situation or do? Like, it's probably better to just let it go and accept it. But
so first thing you should do, I would say, is like educate yourself, because that really helped me. Is to like, okay, so then I had to take literal time off of the rest of my life, and like now I need to go and learn science from scratch, right? So I trust you've been doing a lot of that work, but I'm just in case you haven't, certainly that is helpful. And then also working on epistemology, like it sounds like you probably have now become a skeptical person about lots of things. Are you calling mainly like when you say the situation, do you mean the situation with people who still believe in creationism, or is it a different situation?
Into other family members, nephews have also been homeschooled and taught this exact same stuff. So it's like they're in the same position that I am. It's obviously not my place, and I've never like done anything related to that. I guess it is just commiserating, because it's like
but that's great. But so one of the things I learned later that I was doing that I now know, and I can't speak openly of because I'm still protecting identities of people, but there were people in my family younger than me who, because I became an example of someone who went and learned on my own, and it became public in the family that I was obviously often learning on my own, it allowed those people younger some freedom. I was taking some of the slings and arrows to give them the freedom to research on their own as well, without me even indoctrinating them, right? It was just being that person who, it was probably a challenge for you, just like Aron said. Everyone I knew was a creationist, and it's possible that you can be the one person in these guys, in your nephews and nieces' lives. You're the one person now that in their life who doesn't believe in creationism. And so just like Aron was thankful for his teacher and you're thankful for yours, I wouldn't recommend you engineer it, but you are now in that position to be that for your nieces and nephews as well. Just your existence puts some light in their world that wouldn't otherwise be there.
Right. That's the path that I've taken for the last few years.
Right. And so I would not recommend that you like slip them evolution books, or that you necessarily like do anything. But if you want to, one way of being covert about it is when you're hanging out, because you do want to probably maintain the relationship, otherwise you can't do anything. Oftentimes you can just for when you watch a commercial on TV, you can ask them, "Hey, I wonder if that claim is true. How do you think that you would go about finding out whether the thing that the commercial just told me was true?" And like sort of started to teach some of those skills, right? Of how do we question things, and where would we go for a source, and how do we figure out reliable sources that theoretically their parents can't object to, right? Because you're questioning whether scrub bubbles really work on the tub. So, it's not as threatening. Those are the kind of things that I ended up trying to do with my own kids, right? That was the avenue that was available to me. It's their own journeys. They're on their own points in their own journeys, but these are things that help. So there's stuff you can do.
My kids both asked me at different, at about the same time in each of their lives. My daughter says, "Dad, what's the true religion?" Now, I said the same thing at the same age to my mom. "What's the true religion?" And she says, "Well, ours is, of course." And I remember thinking, well, of course she would say that. How could she say something? How could she say anything else? So when it came my daughter's turn to ask me, she says, "Which is the true religion?" I said, "None of them. They're all wrong, including me." And it was interesting because I still believed in supernatural things at that time. So at the time I was right when I said I was wrong. And then my son, who had been indoctrinated by his babysitter while I'm at work, I come pick up my boy, and he he scans down the hallway. He's 5 years old. He scans down the hallway. He wants to make sure that nobody's in earshot when he asked me this. He says, Dad, how does God just make stuff? And I knew the answer he needed was going to be different than the answer my daughter needed. And so I leaned in and whispered, he didn't. And I could see a wave of relief wash over as the universe made sense again. And I could relate to that because the universe never made sense until I gave up trying to shoehorn a God into it.
Right, to go into nature and see God that way. But when I started doing that, I'm just like, it seemed to me that unless that idea was already existed and given to them, that if you just existed in nature, you wouldn't get that idea that comes from. But that was just a,
yeah, religion has to be taught to you. It's not going to be. To some people, have made the comparison as if our civilizations were to collapse and all of our literature, every type of writing had just all disappeared, and we had to come back and invent language again, and there's no books from the old time, so we have to go figure things out all over again. Science will come back the way it was, one way or another, but the old religions are gone. There will be new religions, completely different ones, but science still going to be the same.
Yeah, that one always
stuck
with me a lot. Well, that's about it. I really appreciate everything.
Yep, my pleasure. All right, we'll go ahead and let
Hey,
you
John.
go. We'll take. We got a couple more in the queue right now. We've even got a theist ready. So we'll talk to you soon, John. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, and I am going to prioritize Will in Puerto Rico.
Howdy.
How do you do?
Hey, Will.
Pretty good, thanks. I noticed you guys were looking for one good reason to believe in God, so I'm going to try to give that to you.
Awesome.
So here's my position. I believe that anyone who is rational, logical, and reasonable must believe in something that is both eternal and uncreated.
Cool. I agree.
Okay. Like the
All right,
universe.
great. So we're on the same page.
Okay.
Now, as a theist, I call that something that is eternal and uncreated God. And that seems to me to make more sense than whatever it is you guys would call eternal and uncreated, which I'm not even sure what that is.
What do you suppose it
material
is?
energy. So I have no reason.
Aaron spoiled it.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I have no reason to
right.
refer to material energy as God.
Yeah. So to me, so again, I'm willing to hear you guys out on what you think it is. The term I hear most often is some sort of singularity.
No.
But in reality, we really do have a very similar position in terms of origin.
No, I doubt that very much, because I don't have an origin in my perspective. The universe always exists.
And I expressed this to a previous caller. What we have in common is that we are both acknowledging that there is a brute fact at the end of the chain.
Yep. So
Great.
material energy,
And so
you can slow down energy to make matter. You can speed up matter to make energy. Both the unification of which was apparently in the singularity, if there was a singularity, which I don't hold. I don't have necessarily a belief in cosmogony. I don't study that. I listen to the opinions of experts, and I accept that the Big Bang cosmology is the best supported explanation for cosmic inflation, or for the evidence indicating cosmic inflation. But I focus on evolutionary phylogenies, and I don't actually care which explanation there are for cosmic inflation, or if you prefer for the origin of the universe, or if you prefer for whether God said abracadabra and poofed everything out of nothing, which I don't believe everything came out of nothing, and I got tired of being accused of believing that I do. None of that, no part of cosmogony has anything whatsoever to do with the fact that we are evolving apes and that all the scriptures ever penned by men are man-made mythology with no truth in them. Not even the existence
Yeah.
of God would change either of those facts.
Okay, cool. And so I'm just trying to give you guys what I think is a good reason to believe in God. And
Okay.
so if we are,
yeah,
go ahead.
Can I give you one reason why that might be an inferior view?
Sure.
And that is, are you familiar with Occam's razor, and do you hold to that?
I'm familiar with it. I don't think it's a law.
No, it's not a law, but I think generally you would agree that when you're trying to evaluate one hypothesis against another, the one that, and again, it's the fewest assumptions, not multiplying entities unnecessarily, right? Is generally Occam's razor. So, Aron and I live in a universe, and you live in a universe with us where matter and energy exists, and we've never experienced matter or energy being created or destroyed. Right? So, when Aron and I suppose that it makes sense to us that maybe matter and energy is the thing that is the brute fact, we don't have to create a new entity, right? We are still working within an entity that we know exists. Any other God hypothesis has to add to it, right? It has to multiply an entity, and in our view, unnecessarily. Does that make any sense?
It does, but here's what I'm going to argue. I think if we both have a starting point, mine is God, yours is energy.
Mm-hmm.
What makes sense with the universe that we live in, with all of the design and order in it, was that there was a mind behind that and not energy, which I think it's irrational to think that just energy would create everything that we have today.
And I don't believe anything was created or designed. And the order that I see is incidental.
Yeah, you understand we'll have that sort of a argument from credulity. Like, you're basically telling us that you see some elements there that you don't feel are sufficiently explained by energy, whereas we do see that it's fully explained, so that we're kind of at an impasse when it comes to straight up credulity. Does that make sense?
It does. I would challenge you and push back a little bit that you could just make it make sense that you just have energy, and now we have this entire universe with incredible order, and
except that the order's not
everything
incredible.
works.
Yeah, I was going to say, what part of the order? What part of the order do you feel like doesn't come from naturalistic laws?
Yeah,
I think if all of the minds in the world worked together but had to start from scratch, we could not design this universe.
That's
because
the
universe wasn't designed.
Yeah, that doesn't really tell us. Like, that doesn't answer my question in any way. The question was, what order do you see that requires supernatural intervention?
All of it. Everything.
Okay, so you're just straight. So you don't think that every time that two hydrogen molecules combine with an oxygen molecule, God's actively like doing something there?
No, but I don't even see where we would get atoms from energy.
What do you think atoms
Here's the
are?
problem I have with this argument. Ultimately, the believer wants to come back down to, they go back to the murky past of things that even the most expert people will sometimes say, you know what, this is as far as we know. You know, we got good information for this point, but there's still stuff that we don't know. Okay, well, there's something we don't know. If you go back far enough, then there's something you don't know. And then you can pretend as if we don't already know things that we do. Like that everything that we know about supposedly know about our deities and such that come from our collective scriptures, that all include stories that we know to be false. So we're going to talk about the Big Bang as if we think that there was still a global flood, or as if we still think that there was an Adam and Eve. Those stories are false. Job having his conversation with God, that's absolutely false. There's no truth to any of that. There was no Exodus. There was no Tower of Babel. None of it. So I can't get it. It doesn't matter what the beginning of the universe was. If there was a beginning of the universe, no Adam and Eve. Bible is wrong. Start with Bible is wrong. And then try to go figure out what's right.
Well, there's a lot of evidence for the things that you just said are wrong. So I'd have to disagree with you there.
Well, I would have to prove the point then, because I'm not wrong here. There was no Adam and Eve. The Garden of Eden is just a fable that's adapted from elder mythology, and we know which myths were involved that added certain tropes. There was no Tower of Babel. We know what that story is about. We know what the kernel of truth between the Noah's flood is, and it's not what Christians make it out to be. There was no global flood. That's absolutely certain. And the Exodus is just not supported mathematically or by any evidence. Even rabbinic scholars admit that now. Historians admit that Moses never existed. Bible scholars don't believe much of the Bible at all. The Pentateuch, just write out. Book of Job, nope, not that either. And a whole bunch else.
This is just out of curiosity, do you believe that Mars was once covered in water?
I think that there's indications that Mars still has water. I don't know if it was covered. I think that there was a sighting of liquid water on Mars at one point. A small amount.
There's a relatively new paper out about there may well be liquid water still on Mars today.
Yeah, it's just got to get the matter of right time.
Are you going to the creation idea that we can believe a flood on Mars, but we can't believe a flood on Earth? Yeah. Is that where you're going?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
That is where I'm going.
No one thinks there's a flood on Mars.
Okay. No one thinks that it was like a vast majority of it was covered by water.
No.
No, not really.
I mean, there's no reason to think that. Mars may have been a vital planet once upon a time. But then there was a planetary cataclysm that set off its 4 supervolcanoes, and Mars being as tiny as it is, the planet literally bled to death. Which is why you don't have a magnetosphere anymore. Mars can no longer support life.
But also, I'm curious. Let's say Aron and I said, "No, what? We both totally believe that Mars was 100% covered with water one day. Let's suppose we did. I don't get the relevance."
Yeah.
It would just be funny to me that we do have evidence that the Earth was covered in water, and it still is a vast majority of it covered in water. It would just be funny to me to think that Mars possibly was, and then denying completely the possibility that the Earth.
I'll grant that we have evidence that the Earth is still today, the surface of the Earth is mostly covered in water. Yeah, I'll grant you that.
Do we have fossilized seashells on the highest mountain ranges?
Yes, we do, because 34 million years ago, the subcontinent of the Indian subcontinent, which is the island continent of Pakistan and India, was on a tectonic plate moving northward until it crashed into Eurasia, which forced what was the seabed between them to become the Himalayas. And that collision is still ongoing, so that the Himalayas are still rising at an inch or so a year, or I think maybe it's 2 centimeters a year, something like that. So yeah, we still have that measurable rise, and so we have the fossils between these two. And then we also have fossils on the Indian subcontinent that were not mixed with the Eurasian fossils until after that collision, which also closed off the Tethys Sea and thus changed our previously tropical environment, which was a horizontal equatorial flow. But when that closed up, when India hit Eurasia, it also raised tectonic plates, sealing off the entirety of the Tethys Sea. And so now the flow of the oceans goes from the poles up and down. And that caused a cooling of the planet, which brought in what we call the Ice Age.
Okay, now I was referring to all mountain ranges in the world.
Well, that doesn't make any sense, because no, we don't have seashells on the top of all mountain ranges. Not everywhere was underwater. Different places were. The biggest mountain in Texas, for example, is a coral reef. So imagine 2,000 foot of coral reef. And if I remember correctly, it's Permian. Well, I may be mistaken about that. No, the Permian is slightly off of that. But anyway, there's a coral reef that requires, in order for coral to grow at its maximum speed, you have to have calm waters for a long time. And that you cannot have an inundation in a year, a global catastrophe. Coral will not grow in that. You have to have calm seas, plenty of sunlight, clear water, all of that for it to grow, the little bit that it grows every year. And here we have a mountain 2,000 feet high made of coral, which means that Texas was underwater for a hell of a long time. And we have other indications in geology that show that there was a division at one point. The United States of North America was divided in half by the Western Interior Seaway. And during that time, Texas, the entirety of it, was underwater, but most of Oklahoma was not. So not every mountain everywhere was underwater. I've been to a Cretaceous beach, which is right at the border of these, where the Western Interior Seaway came into its furthest encroachment. And you can see there's a river that cut all the way through the strata, so that you can see this. When you get to that level of strata, you've got all of these ammonite shells, thousands and thousands of ammonite shells that wash up in the shore and accumulate on top of each other, so that you can tell you've got mixtures of sand, you've got all of the things that you would find in beach. And then further into Oklahoma, at the same level, then all of your fossils are terrestrial. You go into Texas at the same strata, and now they're all marine. And we've seen all over geostratigraphy shows advancing and retreating beaches. There's ways that you can see in the different layers. At this point, the beach is up here. At this point, it's up here. And then at this other point, the beach begins to recede again.
This could be wrong. This is a point of contention now between us, but I've been told that there are fossilized marine fossils on every mountain range in the world. I grew up in Colorado, and I can tell you. Okay, well, we should look into it, but I can tell you, I grew up in Colorado, and there are marine fossils in the Rocky Mountains.
Yeah, you can have, because there's other issues with Colorado. For example, what are you doing back there? Okay, I have a dog behind me making noise. North America didn't always look like this. Western California and Oregon weren't always here. That was an island chain that came in from the Pacific and then collided into the rest of it. Arizona was beachfront property. The Grand Canyon was underwater twice, if I remember correctly. It was twice underwater. Then it rose up, becomes dry land again, and goes back down into the water. And so you have it at advancing levels. Now you've got all marine fossils again, and then back up where you have terrestrial fossils again, and it alternates like that. And then this is where you get the Rocky Mountains, where they have this collision. I forget what they called that term, that raises the Rocky Mountains up. So whatever marine fossils,
subduction, is that what you mean?
May have existed as part of the Western Interior Seaway, for example. Or no, because we're talking about earlier now. I forget about what it was before. It was in the Paleozoic. I forget what the situation was. I'm sorry, I don't have notes in front of me. I'm just doing this off the top of my head.
No, it's okay. It does sound like maybe we're close to being on the same page again, because we're talking about areas that we've never experienced being underwater. You're saying they were underwater.
Yeah, Will, you're understanding that no scientist who denies a flood is confounded about the marine fossils you're talking about.
Yeah, and the other thing is that not all mountain ranges were ever underwater. Some were. Some were pushed up by different tectonic plates, uplifts, upheavals, but not everywhere. Some places were always dry land.
Can you give me an example of that so I can go look to see if they've ever found marine fossils there?
There was a place in central Arkansas where there was it was a chain of islands that always were. There was other places in the state that were underwater, but some of the oldest land just never were. I was on an expedition in South Africa, and there's a mountain range there that was the Himalayas of its day back in the Permian. They were the tallest mountains on Earth in the Permian, and now they're folded over and distorted and everything. But they were always dry land. They were not underwater ever at all.
Will, are you not bothered?
If the mountains are in the area of Prince Albert, but I can't remember what the mountain range is called. Again, I don't have notes in front of me.
Are you, Will, if you're really impressed by the sea fossils, are you not confused and confounded why there's no layer where we find, modern mammals with dinosaurs or humans with dinosaurs? Are you bothered by that? If there was a global flood and it created one mega layer where everyone drowned, are you concerned that we haven't found that?
I haven't looked into it that much. I just thought it was interesting for Aron to take such a bold stance that there's never been a global flood when we have a very difficult task on our hands, no matter what view we have of trying to understand what happened in the past when we can't go back to the past.
I used to, up until a few years ago, I used to believe exactly what you believe. I was 100% on board with dinosaurs on Noah's Ark. 100% on board. And maybe you don't even, maybe I went further even than you did. 6-day creation, I was all in. Until I went looking to see, do scientists have problems with X, Y, and Z? And it turns out they don't. And a creationist tactic that it feels like you might be falling for is by using the search terms that they want to use. So, for example, they like to use the words bent rock, and they like to use polystrate fossils, and they like to use these phrases that creationists come up with so that when you do a search on Google, no scientist is talking about polystrata fossils. What's going on? Well, it turns out they call it something entirely else, right? Because scientists just as someone who's come out of it, I have yet to come up against anything, and I was struggling. I really wanted to hold on to my young Earth creationist beliefs, but it just turns out there wasn't anything that didn't have in my view, and at least as good an answer as what the creation scientists will say. So that brings us back around to your initial call, which is like, you're not giving us anything. You're giving us reasons why, if you want to hold on to this belief, maybe you still can. But you haven't given us anything that's like, well, your view is superior because of X. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm also confused. Like, you don't seem to think that energy can become matter, which is something you said like 10 minutes ago, which is just like, that's super confusing to me. Like, we know how that happens.
Hold on. Yeah. This is good. Now, this is what I wanted to talk to you guys about. So what causes energy to become matter?
As I said before, some physicists have used the phrase that matter is slowed down energy, and energy is sped up matter. And if you want to see if you want to see matter become energy, you're going to see it. You need to see an atomic bomb go off.
Yeah, and that's the reverse of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So neither of us are physicists. So you're going to get unsatisfactory answers. But the fact that you haven't looked it up, to see, and maybe you have. Maybe you just said, you know what the answers they give are unsatisfactory to you. Fine.
Yeah, I'll make a friendly challenge to you. If there's a point of contention, a specific thing that evolution actually shows, quoted verbatim, right, from multiple universities, so that we don't just get one outlier, right? And let's get something that people who teach evolution commonly say, and that you disagree with, and we'll see if we can show that it's false. And then conversely, find me or cite for me one argument any professional creationist ever made that was supposed to be supportive of their position that we can show to be actually factually correct. The challenge there isn't one. Creationists lie a lot.
Well, that's unfortunate if true. Can I throw an argument against you concerning evolution that I came up with myself?
Okay.
And again, I'm not an expert in this stuff at all. Is it safe to say that if evolution is true, at some point there was a creature that did not have blood, and then through a mutation or multiple mutations, the creature then had blood?
We still have those creatures. We don't call them creatures, but yeah, we have animals,
Okay.
very primitive animals that show up in the fossil record and still exist today that don't have blood. Here's one of the things that confuses some creationists. When they want to bring up the argument, which evolved first, the blood veins, the blood itself, the heart. The surprising thing is that the heartbeat appeared before any of those things. And then veins formed later as the pulsation that, like, look at jellyfish and how they swim. You have this rhythmic pulsation, which is basically the beginning of the heartbeat. This is one of the oldest animals that we can see without a microscope. And they have these pulsations. Now, slightly more derived, let's say, slightly more advanced animals will have this pulsation that's moving material throughout their body. We don't call it blood yet, but it takes channels, and so those will become the blood veins. And so eventually, at some point, we have cells that have lost their nucleus, and these are literally blood. So blood cells have initially a nucleus at the very beginning, so that's just regular, biological cells being flushed to the body by this rhythmic situation, and then they don't have a nucleus anymore. Now they're literally blood, and they perform this clotting function, which not all animals have. It's just these more advanced collection that do. And then when you get into hemichordates, a specific subset of worms that are kind of basal to all vertebrates and so on, all the more familiar animals, they had a channel in what would be the main vein of their body cavity, that this channel has an opening in it that becomes the first concept of a heart. So heartbeat, blood veins, blood, heart.
Okay, so I don't even know this is a valid question, but how many mutations would be required to get blood?
How many mutations does the average person have every day? How many mutations is the average person born with?
No idea.
128.
I'm not talking about...
Average. And that's just what you start with. Now, when we talk about...
Mutations are generally a bad thing, right?
No. Most mutations are neutral. The minority is that you can have some mutations that are detrimental. However, those tend to be weeded out very quickly. And then beneficial mutations may have a preferential advantage for natural selection, but most mutation that goes on isn't affected by selection at all. Most of the mutations are neutral, which is why you end up with, like, how many 300 some odd species of parrots, and this is just genetic drift. It's not necessarily.
What's an example of?
I'm sorry.
What's an example of a beneficial mutation in a human?
I have a book that lists several of them. If where you can look up my video on the which is it? I think it's the 8th foundational falsehood of creationism. But the book is better because there was a mistake in the video that I had to put in a note about, because I put in the wrong name of a particular mutation when we were talking about high altitude, the adaptation to avoid apoplexia in people who live in the Andes versus people who live in the Alps. It's a different mutation, but with the same effect. And so there's a whole bunch of mutations that we now know of that people have that are beneficial, and beneficial just means toward that environment. And there's specific subsets of people all over the world who have these certain mutations. One of my favorite is, there's a PAX9 mutation, which started out in Mexico, and 100% of the Mexicans that were sampled by this study had been influenced by the PAX9 mutation, which means that and that doesn't mean that 100% of Mexicans, just 100% of the people that participated in the study. They had the Pax9 mutation, which was developed anogenesis, so that there's no third molar. So what happens with our evolution from the other apes? Their apes are the other apes have bigger jaws than we do. We just have these little gracile, teeny. Our jaws are smaller, our teeth are smaller, but there's no room for the teeth in our tiny jaws. So when that third molar comes in, it often impacts against the other teeth and can be deadly, causing a morbidity that we would die from. And there's fossil hominids that went through that. Well, that's one of them. Then there's another one. There's a myostatin mutation that if you get a double copy of it, one from your father and your mother, then you will have twice the muscle mass of a regular human. And then there's I wish I could remember the name of this. There's a specific type of another mutation in bone density that makes your bones virtually unbreakable. Now, they're a little heavier, so it's a little harder to swim. But if you had both of those mutations, fucking Superman, right? Twice the muscle mass and half the fat, and your bones are unbreakable. And then there's other mutations that we know of for, I have a friend, actually somebody that I know personally, who cannot have a heart attack the conventional way because he has two of the what is it, aorta? I don't want to say, I don't want to get this wrong, but he has two of the valves where normally everybody else has one. And if that valve gets clogged, then you die, right? That's a massive heart attack. But he has two. So he's much less likely to suffer that. That's a beneficial mutation. And the list goes on.
Okay,
There's quite a few of them.
Okay, so I will watch your video. These things you're saying I'm not familiar with them, but I'm not doubting you.
Okay.
But let's just assume for the sake of the argument that what you're saying is right.
Okay.
How does that beneficial mutation pass on to anyone else?
Well, it's your children, right, may inherit the mutation if that mutation is present in the zygote or your gametes. And so when your gamete cells combine, what?
Do we have an example of that where we have a beneficial mutation in a human being, we have the exact same beneficial mutation in their child? I've never heard of that.
Really?
That literally every example Aron just gave.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I definitely would have to see that because that's something I've literally never heard of.
But how do you know that?
Mutation requires that you have to get a double copy. If you get a single copy, if your mother has the gene, your father doesn't, and you inherit only hers, you're not going to get the benefit. You have to have the copy from both of the parents, and then you become like this.
But
yeah, what I'm saying is
there's some mutations.
This guy who can't have a heart attack, I bet you his child does not have that same condition.
Well, this particular person, I don't think has any biological children. But
I'm telling you, if they had a child, it would not happen.
Why? You know that
you're very likely. If he did, it's very likely they would, because children tend to look a little bit like their parents. They tend to inherit
looking is different than having an extra valve on our heart. Like this.
Why is that
again?
different?
I'm open. I am open to changing my mind, and I'm open to evidence. This is something that I just have never seen and would need to be shown.
Look up what causes ginger. Red hair, white skin, freckles, green eyes, all of these are all mutations. And they are inherited by the young. And you have to have specific mutations in a specific order. You have to have it from like both parents as such. You mix almost anything with ginger, you don't get ginger.
Yeah, we are talking about mutations that brought us from energy to man.
But we're talking about mutations that cause red hair and pale skin. That is a mutation.
Will, are you imagining that these mutations are happening while the person is alive?
Yeah.
When do you think these? No. So Will, okay. So this is a mistake I had. I thought the same thing. So you understand these mutations have to be either in the sperm or the egg that creates us.
Yeah.
Any mutation that we get as an adult.
Yeah. So
any mutation we have. Go ahead.
Our cells go through a number every time the cell replicates. They run the risk of doing more mutations. If the gamete cell has a mutation, you may not have experienced this trait yourself, But if that mutation occurs in a gamete cell, which then combines with the female, right, and so now you've got the zygote, and it bears that mutation, then that offspring has that trait that you yourself don't have.
Like, we can't, the mutations Aron was talking about can't happen when you're a child or an adult or whatever. It has to happen in the sperm or the egg.
Yep.
So that's how every cell in your body gets that. And that's when you make a sperm or an egg that you are just necessarily, you can't help but pass that along to your child, because every cell in your body has the same DNA.
Okay, so where, just pardon my ignorance here, where are these mutations coming from before we have even sperm and egg in existence?
Every cell of your body replicates. When they replicate, the DNA strands in those individual cells are rewritten, and there are a handful of different things that cause mutations in the replication. It's set up so that it should be completely perfect, but issues do happen from external and interior reasons, and there's missense and nonsense and duplication, and there's I'm forgetting all the names of the different types of mutation right now, but there's a handful of different ones, and those are just point mutations. There's also mutations that can swap whole vast areas of DNA, just like copy whole pages of a book into the wrong place, or duplicate whole pages, because those types of mutations happen too. And usually they don't have a profound effect, but there are some that we positively identified where the specific type of mutation was involved that created this other feature or ability. And they can be as simple as a point mutation to do that. But then when that mutation happens in the cell, if it is, as Paul said, if it's in a gamete cell, you never had that ability that mutation promises, but your offspring would.
And Aron mentioned earlier up front, on average, each cell gets, a human cell is about 120 genes off of, whatever our baseline is. That's just the way it works. So every sperm that you make is going to have roughly 120 mutations.
Well, that's when they're combined. When sperm and egg.
So it's 60. So 60.
That's 128 mutations on average.
So every sperm that's being made has a roughly, 60 variations. Yeah. So that's how that happens.
Yeah, and again, I'm
genetics. Most of the time, mutations in a large interbreeding population, mutations have very little chance of it being expressed because of the parent gene pool has a tendency to inhibit or restrict new variants. But smaller populations, much more likely. So if you take a large population, you take a small isolated group from that, set them aside in isolation somewhere, then after several generations, you'll be able to tell which group they came from, because the smaller group is going to have unique identifying features that the larger parent group doesn't have, because they have more likely expression.
Galapagos Islands.
Yeah. That's one example. There's several, yeah.
Well, I do wish I understood this stuff more, but this is not my area of expertise. I just think you guys are going to have a very difficult time convincing the masses that just energy by itself is ultimately responsible for the world that we live in. And I think you'll have to appeal to things that would probably fall into the definition of a miracle in order to make that
I
work.
don't see that. I mean, I've had the good fortune of speaking with a number of physicists and such, and then I can think of a few who argue for the eternity of the universe, who say that, like Sean Carroll, for example, that says it's not just material energy. That there's also like the only way that you could understand this is in terms of universal wave function, so that has to be eternal as well. So there's a number of things about this. Nowhere ever do we come up with Bible stories. That we just start with that being wrong, because that's wrong. That remains wrong no matter what the origin, if there is an origin of the universe is. Bible's still wrong.
At some point, it was going to be a very uphill climb to convince people that the Earth revolved around the sun. And at some point, it was a very uphill climb to believe that the Earth was round. The fact that a lot of people are resistant to new information doesn't make the new information wrong in any way.
That's true. I think mainstream science, including both of you, probably believe things have happened in the past that we really have no strong evidence for, meaning we've never witnessed it happen like that before. And I don't see that as much different than you guys giving us a hard time for believing in miracles.
I don't believe anything for which I don't have strong evidence.
Yeah, you're making an epistemological error that a witness is somehow a beneficial.
I can show you the truth of every position I hold.
What about abiogenesis?
Well, that's a long conversation, but if you want it, we got it.
And also, do you accept that at one point there wasn't life?
Yes.
And that now there is life?
Yep. The difference between us here is you think it happened magically, I think it happened naturally, and I have dozens of peer-reviewed biochemical studies showing different aspects of the development of life. Because it wasn't instantaneous, it's a multi-stage process, and we know what many of those stages were now.
Yeah, but
biology is just chemistry.
We've never seen it happen.
This is what that's what I was identifying.
It's not like you pour powder into a blender and then it comes out a rabbit. Life is complicated. So the explanation for the origin of life is extremely complicated. If evolution is giving you trouble, abiogenesis is going to confuse the fuck out of you. There's a lot to it.
I'm just trying to say
most of it. It'd be easier to start with evolution first. Learn how to walk before you run.
Yeah, I'm just trying to say that this idea that life came from non-living matter has never been observed. It doesn't make any sense.
So you're saying a magic imaginary man going abracadabra has been observed?
No, I'm trying to say there's a similarity here where you guys.
I can show you different aspects of the origin of life has been observed directly in the lab. Many different stages of that.
I just hear atheists give us a hard time for saying that they've never witnessed a miracle, and I'm just saying there's a similarity here.
Okay, and I'm saying there's not. I can show you the truth of every position I hold, including that one.
Well, I know. Yeah, but not every step, not every stage of abiogenesis.
So you're aware that mayflies live 24 hours, right? Or So, in your view, a mayfly should never believe that houses are constructed because no house has ever been constructed in their lifetime.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying both sides. One side tries to act like everything is testable, repeatable, and we have evidence for it all. But that's just
we do have evidence for it all. Yes.
But repeatable. So you're misunderstanding. So you're making the same. You're making the same arguments I would have made just a few years ago. That's just what is a little bit frustrating, or also encouraging. Science doesn't actually care about repeatability in the way that you think it does. What science cares about is making accurate predictions. So the notion that you've got from Ken Ham or however this all came from, that repeatable in a lab is what science is going after. No, science wants to predict data that they will find in the future. That's all that it cares about. So you actually will probably need to readjust if you care. You don't have to care, but if you wanted to care about understanding what Aron and I and other mainstream scientists believe, you will need to adopt the fact that we don't, just like we don't think something came from nothing, we don't think that repeatability is some kind of feature of science.
Yeah. We can see,
that's
if you saw boot prints, in the new fallen snow wandering up to your daughter's window and they don't walk away, or if they do walk away, it doesn't matter. Either way, you weren't there to see the person, but
right,
someone walked there. There was no witnesses. Someone walked there. The evidence indicates that.
And I would never believe that the snowflakes falling just happened to create that pattern either.
And the fact that you think that's analogous to evolution means that you're where I was at in my journey not too long ago, and basically not understanding what evolution wants to say. And unfortunately, that's just more. You're not steel manning. Like, you think you're believing the version of evolution that creationists have taught you what evolution was, and I was the same way. And I'm not talking down because I'm an idiot when it comes to this stuff. But
no,
you're just,
that is accurate. What you're saying is accurate.
So yeah, so if you wanted to, you could go back and you could educate yourself on what the actual scientists say, what claims they do make on their own without the filter of the creationist, and then have a problem with those. That's certainly a great conversation to have. But right now, we're basically arguing with you. You've been told things that aren't what we really even believe. So it's a bit of a butting head situation.
Yeah.
All right. Well, I'll look into it more, and I appreciate the call, and maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Thank you, Will. Great call.
Okay. So I
Bye-bye.
think we are at the end of our show. Paul,
All
do you have any
right.
closing comments?
I have no clue. It was a pleasure to work with you. I think we bounce off each other pretty well. I think works pretty well.
I thought so as well.
Yeah.
Now, I'm glad that I have somebody, when somebody wants to talk about philosophy, I can just pass it over to you.
Well, we equally don't care, but I have maybe more patience because I'm still newer to the game. But that said, and anything you have coming up that you wanted to let the people know about?
Oh, no. I was mentioning there earlier that I'm hoping when I get done with this Bob Dutko series that I'm working on right now, that when I'm done with that, I'm gonna focus more on the phylogeny stuff. That even though it doesn't get the hits, it doesn't get the views. Science isn't as interesting as drama for a lot of people. It is to me. And even though these type videos require a lot more research and a lot more work, finding all of the visual references and doing all of the editing takes so much longer, pays so much less. I still see more value in that than simply arguing with people or showing them that they're wrong or that they're lying, which is always the case. So I need patrons. So
I was going to say, if you agree with Aron's vision of that, the means he's not going to get the ad revenue. So if that's a vision you support, head on to Aron's Patreon, and you can support us. You can support our patrons as well if you think these conversations are worthwhile. We count on you as well.
All right, thank you much.
All right, later, guys. Oh,
Aron,
show announcements.
Aron,
did we not do the show announcements? I thought we already did those.
I don't.
Yeah, we did at the very beginning.
Okay, sorry.
Yeah, no worries. Stay tuned to the line. We got great shows this week.
Good night.
See you tomorrow.